Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents, and welcome to a old school edition of Malcontentment News. Today is Thursday, July 8th, 2021. I told Jennifer, take the night off. I'll explain here in a moment, and I actually have to get up for a second and come back. It's not a technical difficulties thing. It's just we're old school tonight. Hey, that's a lot better. It would help if I turned the studio light on here in Studio One. So what's going on? Busy day with the real job. It was actually a really busy day. I was up at 4 a.m. And I barely slept last night. And I had... Oh, you know what? Actually, I didn't explain this to you. I explained it to the mods and admins. I didn't explain it to you. Today was the first gig that our agency, the real side of the house, is the first day that we did a live event today. So we had to drag all of our video, not all of it, but our video equipment and all to a live production today, which is cool. But that also means, because one of the things that we have talked about is a lot of the equipment for Malcontent News is used by the parent company, which is Baden Hill Group. And we had to break down a lot of the studio because we use the equipment that if somebody's doing a hybrid event, so what a hybrid event in the corporate world is, it's live, but you're streaming the live event at the same time so that people can watch. And anyway, most of that equipment that we use for the show is actually Baden Hill Group's equipment, which is, there's nothing sketch about that because it's under the umbrella of Baden Hill Group, which is disclosed on Facebook and on our Impressium over on the website. So anyway, the studio is torn apart. And by the time got back from the real gig, it was like, there is no way the studio is getting set up. So I had told the team, you know, hey, we're going to go old school for all of these reasons. And so we're old school to death. There is a ton to talk about. I can see most of your comments. But you know, I just realized not all of them. We're old school. Bear with me here, Malcontents. I well, that shows a number of people on board, so I'm going to think that it's properly loaded. Let me flip this over here. Or maybe not. I don't know. I'm seeing a crap ton of comments. Okay. I'm seeing your comments. Ah, funny joke. Haha. There's a lot to talk about tonight. A whole lot to talk about. I think what I want to talk about first is something that we did a thing, and you did a thing, particularly if you are one of our Venmo supporters or a subscriber over on Patreon. You all did a thing, and this is the thing that we did. We kind of stuck it to about 40 Republicans. And I mean that in the literal sense. Are you ready to hear about this thing that the collective we did? We wrote a story back in April calling out Toyota for contributing to multiple Republican Congress critters who supported the insurrection on January 6th, and who, despite the fact that the insurrection happened, they had to go run for their lives in the basement. Mike Pence, right? They were out to yeet Mike Pence. That Mitt Romney was less than a minute from getting yeeted. Right? All the things that happened on 1/6. About 140 Congress critters came back, and they still voted not to certify the election. And so Toyota and about 1,000 other brands said, we're not contributing you to anymore. Most of those brands actually kept to that promise. About 70 broke them, including Microsoft, if you want to just know about some local companies. And there's others. But the biggest culprit was Toyota. We wrote a story about this over at malcontentnews.com back in April. It's one of those stories that, you do like all the deep, we had receipts. We did actually a lot of deep research. We deep linked and we pulled from public sources that research campaign finance, where money goes. It's one of those stories that you do, which well, you probably don't know. Journalists, I actually talked to a bunch of real journalists one day, and they all said that, yeah, this is the reality. Stories that you spend a ton of time on researching, you get like a couple hundred people read it. And, some kind of like fluff piece that you throw together in like 20 minutes. Those are the ones that get like 20,000 people that look at it. It's really bizarre, and it's really true. And this Toyota story we wrote was one of, it probably had 200 people read it. And that was it, the end. Some of you probably are going, I remember Axios blew this up. Axios ran this big story on this, right? You remember this? You remember Axios running this big story? So what happened is we have been talking to Axios. There's been some stuff going on. This started in May. And I have to say that the board, our editorial board, was very displeased when the Axios story broke in June, because we know they've been looking at the website. And we looked at the story, and it's like, you took our research. You took our research and you ran with it. And they wrote a different story, but it's really sus, right? It's really sus. But here's the part in the collective we. Toyota today, because of the massive backlash, and in part because of the flashlight that Axios shined on this, that was then picked up by everybody because Axios, Toyota has gone like, okay, yeah, we're not going to do contributions anymore because, their Prius buying, hybrid buying audience probably isn't very, very big on investing in people to try to overthrow the government. So Did we kind of do a thing in shining the flashlight on that? I think we may have kind of done a thing on shining a flashlight on that. So that's the first thing I want to say. And at the end of the day, if Axios got the idea, the genesis, if they were like, oh, let's click on some of these links and look at some, oh, there's something here, right? And they ran with it. And at the end of the day, we ended up taking money out of the pocket of people that wanted to overthrow the sitting government. I'll take it. And on the subject of trying to overthrow the sitting government, big news out of Seattle, which is starting to become national news. 2 SPD officers are now being recommended to be fired by the OPA because they were in the forbidden zone in the Capitol during 1/6. They weren't actually in the Capitol, but they were in restricted areas. Now, when the flashlight was like, hi, how you doing? Guess what? Yeah, the FBI has shared some still images of videos that they have. Oh, and by the way, the FBI are investigating you. And they weren't willing to give us the whole videos. They were just willing to give us some stills so that we could make some decisions on you. Yeah, those statements that you made to us about like, oh, no, we were just, we were there for the speech. Yeah, not true. Here's the pictures of you. Here's the pictures of you by the wall with people climbing on the wall. Here's the pictures of you with police officers getting beaten literally in front of you, and you're doing nothing about it. We thought we would just let you know we have receipts. And so these 2 officers, they're the married couple. They were the ones that went to the insurrection as part of their honeymoon. What a special honeymoon. What are you going to do in your honeymoon? We're going to try and overthrow the government and yeet the vice president. That's what we're going to do. So they're being recommended to be fired. Now, SPOG and SPD both said that they would be making statements later today. As of airtime, have not seen statements from SPOG or SPD. There's 3 other officers that were reviewed. Meyerberg's statement is basically their attendance is reprehensible. Going to a stop a steal thing is gross. But at the end of the day, they are protected from the First Amendment. And by all evidence and everything that's been provided, and everything in our review, they didn't break any laws. And they are protected by the First Amendment. And you know what? I'm consistent with my values, and I may find it reprehensible, but I am going to respect that. But then there's named person number 3. So we've talked about named person or named employee 1 and 2, and we've talked about named employee 4, 5, 6, but we haven't talked about named employee 3. Named employee 3 refused to cooperate with the OPA in any way, shape, or form, refused to provide them any information. And so because the OPA has no capacity to compel, because the SPOG contract is so awful for the people of Seattle compared to other communities, we'll get into that in a minute, to contrast, they could only come up that it is inconclusive because that individual would not cooperate with the investigation. The FBI, according to the stranger, is investigating some of the officers. But of course, what we don't know is this the married couple, love American style? Feeling kind of cute today. Maybe try to overthrow the government and then get fired 6 months later for it. Of course, we don't know if they'll ultimately get fired. That is up to Acting Chief Adrian Diaz. And we'll just see what happens there. Acting Chief Diaz has said, on 1/8, he said, basically, I'm going to paraphrase, but if they were in the Capitol, if they're directly involved in the insurrection, their asses are going to be fired. That's a heavy paraphrase. He then, a couple of weeks later, actually took it a step further, which basically was, if they broke any laws, so basically, if they trespassed on the Capitol grounds, it's going to be bye-bye land for them. Now we're going to have to see, will he be true to his words? The lawn of the Capitol has been verboten no trespassing since 9/11. So, and of course, then when they were confronted with the pictures, according to the reports, Then they were like, well, we didn't know. We didn't know we weren't supposed to be there. And the position of the OPA is ignorance is not a defense, which, by the way, if you, I, or anybody else, unless you're Seattle police, broke the law and your argument was, well, I didn't know I was breaking the law. The court, ignorance is not a defense for breaking the law. Now, so we're going to have to wait and find out. We have up to 30 days to find out if they're going to be fired or not. You can guarantee they're going to appeal. You can guarantee it's going to go to arbitration. And you can almost guarantee that they'll continue to get paid. Don't forget, they're on paid leave. So, taxpayer in Seattle, yeah, you get to pay for these a-holes. Isn't that wonderful? Lucky you. Lucky you, taxpayers in Seattle. Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at your comments, and that's right. They were like, what do you think? We think we should get into this? I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about it. And yeah, exactly. And of course, the other thing is that what we've learned is at least some of the people involved are still under investigation of the FBI. Now, I'm a bit surprised what happened today, because what I was discussing with our mod and admin team, because 535 people have been arrested, there are 300 people that are wanted still. And so what I was expecting was, or thinking, if they had done something, they would have been picked up by the feds at this point. But it is interesting that, A, the feds will not hand over the video, according to the OPA, because of ongoing investigation. And again, the stranger reporting that there is there's further investigation going on with the FBI. So it'd be very interesting to see, now that this has come out, will there be federal charges? It'd be very interesting with named employee 3, who, of course, has just refused. What? Named employee 3, why didn't you just comply? I thought you were supposed to just comply. Just comply. We're your friends. This is your last chance. You go ahead and tell me what's going on, and I can help you out. But, if you don't tell me, I'm going to have to throw the book at you. Well, it doesn't work that way in Seattle with the OPA, because the OPA, of course, really is a semi-powerless organization, unfortunately, as we know. So we'll see what happens. And I said I was going to contrast, so let's contrast. There was a video that was out about less than a month ago. It's taken in South Carolina. It's taken by a woman who provided an outstanding example of how to videotape the action of police. And she kept her distance, but as things started to move and were out as she would move to keep the camera on things, she generally kept her commentary to a minimum and let the camera do the talking. And it involved 2 brothers in South Carolina, one who was particularly roughed up. And of course, the police report did not match the videos. What a shock. Not like that's never happened before. That was less than a month ago in South Carolina. Now think South Carolina, black men being arrested and brutalized by the police. What we are taught in woke Seattle, because we're so woke here, we're so progressive, so inclusive. We don't have any more work to do as a city. Then at a place like that, the police would just get away with things like the Seattle police do. Well, the officer who was involved in the incident's been fired. Yeah, and no paycheck, fired. And they're now facing criminal charges of assault for their actions against this individual that was caught on camera. And in the big scheme of things, we're not talking George Floyd here. We're not talking Manny Ellis here. Is the video awful? Yeah, the video's awful. But I want to, just because we're not playing the video, I just want to specify, right? The bar's nya. It's not nya. Fired. That's it. Fired. We're not even sure if these two officers are going to get fired in Seattle, right? I mean, that's the reality. We don't even know if they're going to get fired. We'll see what's happening. So, wow, there's a ton of comments. There's a ton of comments on, I want to say Restream. There's a ton of you on Twitch tonight. Oh my God, Farmer Barb's in the house. I was just thinking about you. We love Farmer Bob. I was totally like, I haven't seen her in the comments in a while. I was getting worried about you. I'm not seeing a lot of Facebook comments tonight. Interesting. Please make a news story about Ricardo Torres Jr. I'll have to look it up. This has been kind of a busy, crazy week for me, and that's actually why we're doing this old school show. Next thing I want to talk about is, I hope we're like, are we on Facebook? Is there a problem with Facebook? Because I'm looking at the comments and I see everybody is on Twitch. There's only like a couple of Facebook comments. Is there a problem with Facebook that I need to know about? We actually had a problem with Facebook. We were streaming today. You see Facebook. Okay. I'm on Facebook. All right. Y'all are just quiet over there. I see. I get my 10,000 followers. Now you're like, okay, we don't have to watch anymore. That Peanut snatched my creamsicle. Way to go, Peanut. I've met Peanut. Peanut's a cute dog. All right, next thing I want to talk about. A group of meteorologists and scientists have determined, contrary to what Cliff Mass had to say, Cliff Mass, damn close to the lone voice in the woods on this one, that the massive heat wave that we just all went through was undoubtedly, unarguably a product of climate change. 97% of the country goes, I'm shocked, and 3% of the country goes, what are you talking about? Because, again, about 97% of people believe. I always point out, George W. Bush, when he was president, said climate change is real. We're not seeing as many Congress critters going, it's not real. I know. Johnson mouthing it was bullshit. I mean, he's fash. I mean, he's fash. And I'm just here like, okay, it must be obvious day at Camp Stupid because, it was 108. Richland was 118, which is hotter than Las Vegas ever got. There was a really funny tweet yesterday from just some random person that was commenting on a story that the Seattle Times ran. A lot of publications ran this story from this white paper that came out from this global group of scientists that analyzed what happened with this heat. I called it heat doom instead of heat dome, something that I kind of called a reverse polar vortex, which oversimplifies, and it's not really what it is, but it sounds cool. It's a reverse polar vortex. Because the whole polar vortex thing is like, it's not really a polar vortex either, right? It's like, anyway, it was a miserable heat wave. Absolutely. Anyway, there was somebody that commented, I remember summers where it was 90 degrees for 30 days, meaning not like 30 days in a row in Seattle, but more than 90 degrees in Seattle, over a summer for 30 days. And this person was, and I do say this ironically, roasted on Twitter. My reply, it was only 1 hour old, and it was just roasted with people, with meteorologists and weather bloggers, all these comments. 2015 is the summer where we had the most 90-plus degree days in the history of weather records being kept, the colonization era of weather records kept in Seattle. Now, that isn't just a KSCA. See, if you're new, I say KSCA. What I'm talking about is SeaTac Airport. Weather records were started there in 45. Prior to that, it was at the Federal Building downtown. That isn't a big deal, but when you're benchmarking because of the change of location and the change of geography, we're not talking about dragging the rain gauge and the temperature, the thermometers here, a quarter mile. This is a big difference. If you're not familiar, you're talking almost maybe 15 miles from the federal building downtown to where KSE is out at the airport. 50 miles in a straight line, not if you drive. So it's a pretty significant distance change. But those weather records go back into the 1800s at the federal building. So going all the way back there, 2015 was 12 days. That's it, 12 that were over 90. We are at 4. Interesting, isn't it? We had these, we didn't reach 90 the day before we hit our first 100, and then we were mercifully way cooler than what the models showed. The marine layer came in and just said, not today, Satan, and at least held us into the mid-80s. Microclimates here are real crazy, Kimberly, which is why whenever I generally do the broader forecasts, I really focus on Kirkland, Bellevue, Woodinville. I live in that area, and this is why, like, we started as a weather blog, and the reputation that started with this was being able to identify these microclimates. And when we get snowstorms out here, sorry, my face is a little, probably cat hair or something. When we started doing the forecasts out here, particularly with snow, I will forecast down to this part of Kirkland can expect this. These parts of Bellevue can expect this. These parts of Woodinville can expect this. And I can get down to the neighborhoods. But I understand that, and that's where the focus. And that's why when people sometimes will be, well, how much snow are we going to get in Olympia? Because I hear you're really good at the snow there. I'm like, I don't know. What's the National Weather Service say? Anyway, what a shock. Global warming. Oh my God, InfoPigs. Wow. Like a bunch of I'm doing old school, and like all these old school commenters are in here. This is great tonight. I got to do, I love it. I just said I had 100 comments, which is just really weird because it feels like I like your Meeseeks shirt. It was a gift, and I love it also. Absolutely. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me. Existence is paid to a Meeseeks. We're learning more and more about what's happened with this historic meteorological event. When we got up on July 29 of 2009, it got up to 103. There were, which was bracketed by a 98 and a 97. I always say, I got to look it up because I can't quite remember if the day after was 97. We had a 3-day run. The middle was 103, which was July 29. And there were a number of people that were, when we had this, like, that record's going to stand, because Seattle only been over 100 2 other times. The first time, 1941, down at the federal building. And that was 100 degrees and 100 degrees. So peaked at 100, and 1941, it was just literally, it was like 100, going back down. And in 2009, we lingered over 100 for a long time. And on Saturday, that first day of our massive heat wave, we were a little more humid, right? We got to 102 that day, but it was a touch more humid, so it felt worse. But we didn't linger. It was one of these things, same thing, 102, going back down. When we got to Monday, right, we were 8 hours over 100 degrees. Held on. So it's not only did we have these 3 100-degree days in a row, topping out at 108, but we had probably more collective minutes over 100 degrees on Monday than we did on the 5 prior days before that. And we're learning some of the things now. It is estimated that 1 billion bivalves, mostly mussels and clams, because apparently there was essentially a king tide. We had a very, very high tide, very, very low tide during this heat wave, so the timing was terrible. But it's estimated that from British Columbia to Oregon, 1 billion with a B bivalves literally cooked in their shells. I mean, who cares? Whatever. We don't care about farmers, chuds. We don't care about farmers, people that I thought farmers were important to chuds because seafood farmers have been devastated. Hama Hama, you ever had Hama Hama oysters, right? Hama Hamas? Like they're friggin' devastated. Oh, and by the way, dear leader, the orange one, yeah, he put all these tariffs up and that hurt shellfish sales for all of these companies. And then COVID hit and people weren't eating out, which hurt their sales further. And now a bunch of the seafood that they harvest and rely upon literally cooked to death in their shells. Literally. 1 billion with a B. And because a lot of these were mussels, by the way, mussels will kill me. I can't eat mussels, and I love them. And I went from kind of like, I feel a little weird after eating mussels, and I would just motor, and it got worse. Sometimes you get something where I get a little tinge, and you eat it right, and it goes away. Your body, no, this went the other way for me. The last time I had a mussel was like in 2007, and I was probably like that close from the person I was with going, yeah, you know what? I think you call an ambulance because the whole anaphylaxis thing. And I took like a handful of Benadryl and it worked. And I was like, okay, no more mussels. Mussels are filter feeders, so are clams, and they help purify the water in these estuaries which have low tide. So if what we're going to have happen over the summer, now right now, last couple of days it's been almost a January couple of days, right? Yesterday was like hardcore, almost January. Hey, Wendy, hello out there in Portland. Love it, love it, love it. And yes, Dora, we're going to talk about some of the other crops. So the concern is that with the loss of 1 billion bivalves, that this is going to hurt summertime water quality as we get further into summer and the sea temperature goes up and the winds die down and this becomes a little less churny, and we're probably going to have more toxic algae blooms, which then infects more bivalves that the farms can't harvest. Cherry crops. Cherry crops are devastated. Cherries cooked on the trees. And some cherry trees, including some that we went around and looked at, and when I say we, I mean me, Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent, the trees themselves are massively heat damaged. In eastern Washington and in the Willamette Valley, the grapes that faced afternoon sun, cooked, destroyed, cooked on the vines. Blueberry, the raspberry crop in the Pacific Northwest was basically destroyed. There was a story that was saying, hey, you like raspberry jam? Guess where most of those raspberries come from making raspberry jam? Yeah, the Pacific Northwest. Guess what just happened to all the raspberries, which were basically just to the point of getting picked? Yeah, they basically cooked over those 3 days and they're useless. So if you like raspberry jam, get ready for the prices to go up because there's no friggin' raspberries to make the raspberry jam with. I actually didn't know that. I wouldn't have said they came here. So you learned something new. They literally cooked. I talked about plums, and I know some plums in our plums are destroyed. They were cooked on the tree. If you know what to look for, because we're about 10 days past that heat wave now, and if you start driving around, which you're probably going to start seeing, you'll see some of our evergreen trees. Cedars and hemlocks in particular seem to be the ones that have been hit the hardest, particularly cedars. What you're going to see is their branches are yellowing out. They're turning orange. And what it is, it's heat damage. The concern now is that these trees, which are very heat shocked, that we're going to lose some of these trees. The concern that I have as a weather nerd is not this fall, but next fall, when we get a windstorm, there are going to be a lot of branches and trees coming down from these shocked trees. And we're going to have massive power outages. As I am talking tonight, New York City, the subway system is flooded out again. I mean, massively flooded out. The highway system in New York flooded again. Because I don't know, because Elsa. New York City gets remnant tropical storms and nor'easters all the time. This isn't new to get torrential rain in New York City. Anybody who's lived in the East Coast knows this. So what's changed? Sea level's going up. And the little bit of change that's happened has raised the water table there just a little bit. And you throw in more with that increase, the water's got nowhere to go. And it doesn't help that it's friggin' just wall-to-wall concrete out there. But it's always been wall-to-wall concrete out there. And so it's got nowhere to go. So it goes in the subways and the streets. And it's flooded out again. Amaran, absolutely. And yeah, people are talking 4 to 5 feet weather. Yeah, it's really bad. And social is what's going on. And we have a hemlock tree, we have a little, I think it's a hemlock, we have a little hemlock in the back. And it's little, and it's actually really sheltered where it's at. That tree doesn't get a lot of sun. The other thing about that tree is our the way we have our irrigation set up. That tree actually gets kind of a daily watering. Not a lot, but it's not just been sitting in the ground waiting for water. And that tree's really hurt. Like it's just shedding needles like crazy. It's starting to turn brown. And we're just like, we really don't, because we like this tree, right? It provides some privacy on some windows, number one. It's just a pretty tree. And it creates this really nice cool spot in the backyard. So the New York City subway system is an aqueduct tonight. And then this has all sorts of negative consequences for New York. The subways are full of rats. It's not gross, it's liberals. There's rats in every friggin' tunnel everywhere. Where are those rats going to go? They go up into the streets, and then they do their little rat thing, which causes other problems. So there's so much we are ignoring. And I kind of talked about this last week, and I'm like, I don't know what the answer is, right? We had this lightning siege, this unprecedented lightning siege created by pyrocumulus clouds in British Columbia with the 710,000 strikes, 129,000 strikes that were cloud to ground, 29,000 of those hitting something, making it all the way to the ground, that created over 100 fires. And you could watch on the satellite images, these pyrocumulus clouds exploding. There's a fire now in Idaho. That's the big smoke maker. If you look at the national smoke map in the United States, the lava fire, the fires that are burning down by Mount Shasta, they're smoke makers. They've got one hell of a smoke plume, but it's nothing like this fire out in Idaho. That is it, which I think is out by Lenore. That is a massive smoke maker. And that is the fire that was impacting part of eastern Washington from a smoke standpoint. And we have some more smoke coming in tomorrow, high altitude again. Yeah. Here's the other thing. Elsa crossed over Florida in very unfavorable conditions, ran across Georgia, and has maintained its tropical status. These things didn't happen. Elsa became a named storm on July 1, I believe. Not July 1. Elsa is the earliest number 5 storm, the 5th name storm in the modern radar era. And the reason we say the modern radar era, the modern satellite era, is prior to satellite, prior to radar, we couldn't see hurricanes, right? So say in the early 1950s, mid 1950s, the only reason that the Weather Service would know there's a hurricane is there'd be some ship out there going, holy crap, 100-mile-an-hour winds. We're in a friggin' hurricane. Where are you? We're here. Okay, hurricane's there. That's how they did it. Once we got even old school weather satellites with just crappy black and white pictures, essentially, like what we have today is just unimaginable. we at least then could go, oh, okay, that looks like a hurricane in there. That looks like a hurricane, right? And we could keep counts. This is the earliest we've been to Storm 5. Here's the thing. Pizza Rat just can't catch a break. I love it. Here's the... Actually, I'm craving pizza tonight, too. Here is the thing that people of a certain political persuasion get upset with when you bring this up. Let's talk about the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota tribes. Now, they're called the Great Sioux Nation. I've explained many times where I don't like using the term the Great Sioux Nation. And I know that they've kind of begrudgingly adopted this. Sioux is a Chippewa word for lower than snakes. It's not a complimentary word. So I generally try to refer to them in their nations. When I talk to them broadly, because there are so many multiple tribes, it gets a little hard to lift off Lakota, Nakota, Dakota. And I always end up leaving one or two off because there's a pretty long, there's Rosebud, there's a long list of nations involved there. These First Nations were the last ones back in the 1800s to hold out against federal troops in the U.S. government, right? We have the Wounded Knee Massacre that happened in the 1890s, and then we had the Wounded Knee in 1973, which a lot of people don't know about. We did a 50-minute education, Jennifer and I, session on the anniversary of it. Wounded Knee. They got the Badlands in South Dakota as their reservation, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Poorest place in the United States of America. Do you know why it's called the Badlands? I've been there, by the way. I have receipts. Been to the Badlands when I was a travel writer multiple times, and I've been to Pine Ridge. And I've always said my journey in social justice was born on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I'll be forever indebted to Nellie Cooney to opening up my eyes. And this was a long journey of me from being kind of a Reagan Democrat Republican. I know people find that hard to believe, to where I'm at. And that was really the genesis of, oh, wow. It's called the Badlands because the land's bad. How bad is it? It's so bad, you can't grow crops there. You can barely graze cattle there. The prime grazing areas within Badlands National Park are not on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Now, the Cooney family up there, there's Cooney Table. Their names go very far. They actually possess some of the better land out there, and there is some grazeland. The water is not potable. The water is not drinkable. And because of the silt content, how much there is, it's not filterable. So, like, if you're going to backpack through the Sage Creek Wilderness, you need to carry all of your water because, I'm just going to bring my life straw. Yeah, your life straw is going to work for about 5 minutes, and then it's going to be completely clogged up from the silt, and it's not going to work. So the water's not potable. You can't grow anything. There's nothing to mine, and there's very little forage for livestock. That's why it's called the Badlands. The land's useless. And that's what they got. Now, go just a little bit outside of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, whether you go up into the Black Hills or whether you go a little further north, the land's really fertile and there's water there. Poor people, minority people, were forced into areas that white people didn't want to live. There's a rather large population, say in the Hanford area, of black people. Omari educated me on this. Why is that? Well, who wants to live next to a plant that processes radioactive isotopes? There are places and communities that were along the Mississippi River that were built in floodplains. And they were built in floodplains because they were black communities. And they were literally told, yeah, you can't build there. No. You're not living there. You go live there. It floods there. Yeah, too bad. Goes flood. Vanport, Oregon, was built on a Columbia River floodplain. And Vanport became a thriving community. This was the West Coast Tulsa, right? It got swept away. The whole thing destroyed. And, they were a little too successful there in Vanport. Yeah, we're not going to rebuild that. No. In New York, there is a community that is mostly black. In Brooklyn, it is on a very low-lying spit of land, a little thumb that sticks out. Why did they end up there? Because it floods all the time. And white people said, you can go live there. We don't want to live there. So as the sea level rises, as we have more extreme weather events, as we have more extreme droughts and more extreme flooding, who is impacted? And it's not just a United States thing. In a lot of the world, poor people live in areas that middle class and rich people don't want to live in, and middle class and rich people say, yeah, go live there. There may not be anything you can farm there, and there may not be any drinking water there, and the ocean may come in and flood it all the time, but you can go live there. Okay? Go live there because we're benevolent. We're going to give you this space. Oceanfront property. And this stuff is disappearing. Climate change is tied to systemic racism, and it is tied to increasing poverty. And the thing that I'm so frustrated by, it's not just our inaction. The thing that I'm frustrated by is what I see is, we particularly see this right with farmers. Because what's happening now with farmers is they're really starting to feel the real impacts. Things that they were warned for 20, 30, going back to the 1980s. I remember watching this thing, like no one talks about this. And I know David Suzuki, I know there's some ick factor with him. And I can't remember in this random stream of consciousness that I have going on right now on what the ick factor for David Suzuki is. I don't know if he was Me Too'd. I know there's an ick factor with him. In the 1980s, I remember watching this in the 80s. David Suzuki did this thing. It ran on PBS in Boston. I don't know where. Maybe it just ran in Boston. WGBH, so cool shit in Boston. And it ran there, and it was all of these models. Early, what will things look like in 50 or 75? You know what? We're getting to some of David Suzuki's predictions from the 80s. And he was right on a lot of stuff. And like the thing I'm frustrated with farmers is that these farmers, a lot of them, 10, 20, 30, it's just seasonal stuff. My father, the 1930s, right? And now it's all falling apart. And you have farmers here in the Pacific Northwest who just watch their berry crops cook in the fields. And let's not forget, Donald Trump put up a bunch of tariffs which hurt these. There were more farmer bankruptcies under the Trump administration than any prior presidential administration. Way to go. Way to go. And that was even like with the corporate bailouts. We're just going to make it rain to prop up the farmers. And you've got farmers now that are just shell-shocked. Are like, I've never seen this before. My crop's cooked in the field. They're ruined. How is this even possible? And you have people like Cliff Mass, who, by the way, was a guest of Spog at a Back to Blue rally. We have this up on our Twitter. We have receipts. We have the video. And was there talking to American Wolf and the Proud Boys and Turning Point USA. We're going to talk about Turning Point USA. Oh, there's some. They really owned the libs. We're going to talk about how Turning Point USA totally owned the libs. We're going to talk about that next. Well, of course, the farmers are blaming it on it's all Biden's fault. Well, Biden turn up the heat to 118 in the central part of Washington, didn't turn it up to 110 on the western side, and cooked all of this stuff. Rex, I seem to remember that there's something icky about David Suzuki, and I can't for the life of me. Right? Someone's going to Google it, and there's something icky that happened with him. I don't know if it was Me Too or something. It's like it's not real. It's I'm saying icky. I'm right. I'm not saying he was hanging out with Epstein. Not saying that. I just seem to remember there was something kind of icky with Suzuki. Damn, I can't put my finger on it. See, that's Rashi. It's like that. It's like there was something icky. And he's been kind of canceled, and he was canceled before canceled. I don't know. There was something like, see, but there's people in the comments. There's some people in the comments saying that they're also remembering stuff. We're going to have another miserable wildfire season. There's a huge grass fire. And on the subject of wildfire season, and then we're going to talk about how Turning Point USA is owning the libs. I love it. This Turning Point USA story is going to be great. Was he really? I didn't think he was that old. I didn't think he was that old. Seriously. What's the source for that, Rashi? Just want to make sure. See, like, remember I said there was something icky. So the girl thing, the misogyny thing, that was what was sticking in my head. Yeah, we could talk. Oh, we're going to talk about COVID. That's another good one. Yeah, we need to talk about Delta variant. And that's actually tied to Turning Point USA. Let's see, we're talking about Suzuki. I was moving to something else, and we'll just talk about Turning Point USA. We're just going to move. I had no idea, man. I'm not going to look half that good at 85. Damn. I hate him even more. Okay. Turning Point USA is owned the libs. Co-founder of Turning Point, not Charlie Kirk, the guy who funded Charlie Kirk. Yeah, there's an announcement that came out very quietly at the end of June. Because, Turning Point USA is all about don't get a vax, don't wear a mask. It's, plandemic, blah, 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 right? All this stuff. Yeah. Well, the guy who's been financing all of that, guess what happened on June 29? Anyone want to guess in the comments of what happened on June 29? Turning Point USA. The man with the money, 80 years old. Turning Point USA, part of involving overthrowing the government, tried. Katie was there, got a concussion. She doesn't like to talk about it whenever we bring it up. He caught a cold. Rex, you're kind of... Oh, no. Oh, yes, he definitely had a positive COVID test, but he also then, that positive COVID test led to a negative test. He's unalive. He's yeeted, and he got yeeted from COVID. So COVID doesn't care. He doesn't care. COVID doesn't care. Doesn't care what you think. It's a virus. And the Delta virus is getting pretty gnarly. But yes, Turning Point USA owned the libs by having their co-founder die of COVID on June 29. Charlie Kirk, really not the brains behind Turning Point USA. This other guy was the brains. Charlie Kirk is the charismatic face of Turning Point USA, not the bucks, not the brains. And I actually think losing that individual isn't good for that organization. But, it's been good for Katie. Katie, we still want to know what happened in Washington, D.C., where you got the concussion and were sidelined for 2 weeks. And we'd also like to know, were you on that plane, that Alaska Airlines flight from Dulles? Are you on a no-fly list, Katie, with Alaska Airlines? What are you going to do with those miles if you can't fly? We really want to know. Yeah, Delta variant. Delta variant is gnarly, and here is the race that we're up against. And this is another thing that I am concerned about. As long as COVID, or for that matter, any virus, can get a toehold in a community and continue to spread and mutate, as it continues to mutate, it becomes a threat to the protected community. Because if it mutates into something that breaks through, then all of a sudden, it doesn't matter. People have been vaccinated. And there was a travel advisory that's come out from it's not like an official travel advisory. It's just more like, look, there's some states like Missouri, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, and the COVID numbers are really bad in these states. And if you're thinking about vacationing there this summer, you should really be rethinking about where you're going to go on vacation. And that's basically the summary of it. We know out of Israel that, particularly with the Pfizer vaccine, the Delta variant seems to be able to break through. That's the bad news. The good news is it's 64% effective is what they're seeing, which still is right on the ragged basement edge of an effective vaccine. That's right. Vaccines are not 100% effective. And the people that are getting sick that have been vaccinated are generally having mild to moderate symptoms. I have a person in my orbit vaccinated, and they have a breakthrough Delta infection. So not a person I had direct contact with. I have gone back to wearing a mask in the store. I've actually have unmasked, and I was embracing it. And I will not mask outside, but going into stores, going into non-known entities, I'm wearing a mask. The event that we worked today was outside. It was in a tent, and so I didn't wear a mask. And I know a lot of people that were in that community that were in there, and I know there were people who were vaxxed. And we're seeing in states like Missouri in particular, the numbers are really bad. Now, here's the thing. Look, if there's anything you're going to walk away with tonight, I'm really asking you to walk away with this, because this is really important. This isn't just an anti-mask issue and an anti-vax issue. Yes, there are people in these states, these red states, that are being impacted because they aren't wearing masks. They don't want to get vaxxed. But that isn't the total problem. In a lot of rural areas, and this is the thing that I'm going to close on tonight. In a lot of rural areas, you have deserts. There are food deserts, banking deserts, internet job deserts, internet access deserts, and healthcare deserts. And people that live in these areas are predominantly poor. So there are mixed in these areas, because you got to remember, a lot of people listening to we see the demographics. The editorial board and we meet. I know we haven't met in 3 weeks. We're going to meet this Sunday. Editorial board and we meet on Sundays, and one of the things we go through is we go through the numbers and our demographics, and I'm sure some of the editorial board will go in agonizing detail. It's important because then this is part of how we're growing, because we shift our content, because we know who watches. It's mostly women. I don't know how to take that. I'll take it as a compliment. It's mostly women, 25 to 54. That's a good demo to have. And demo is mostly in Washington. We are growing nationally, but for the most part, and it makes sense. We cover a lot of local issues, right? Makes sense. We're reaching out to a community that wants to understand the people that are disadvantaged in this country. We don't necessarily are reaching out to a lot of people in our audience that are disadvantaged. There are some people in our audience who definitely are. Not saying that, but I this is what the demographics are. And there's a reason why I preface this. We live here in the Pacific Northwest, particularly if you are west of the Cascades. We live in a friggin' bubble. Right? You can go, well, they've pulled back because we're over 70% vaccinated. As we were, meaning King County, as we were rolling to 70% vaccinated in King County, saying we were at 60%, you could go anywhere to get a vax. King County was like, Uber and Lyft, call an Uber, cool Lyft, it's free. We will take you there. King County was, you can't handle Uber or Lyft, call us. We will arrange transportation to take you to a shot. You need health care, you need child care, we'll get you child care to get a shot. You're feeling so sick after your second dose, you're like, oh my God, I can't take care of my kid. Call us up. We will arrange child care for your kid as you're going through kind of that 24-hour recoup window. These were the things that we did. This is one of the reasons we're over 70% vax. Guess where some of the lowest pockets of vaccination are? In the minority communities, in the poor communities, in communities where English is a second language or even a third language, or where people have very low English proficiency. If you have terrible English proficiency, you're not going to be able to book the appointment to get the shot or even understand or get the communication on why it's important to do it. Now let's go to rural America, particularly where you have BIPOC communities. First of all, in these red states, policies that hold these communities down are every bit in effect over there, and they're every bit in effect here in Washington State. And don't think for one second that we're woke here, because we're not. We're so not woke. So you have pockets of people that are in medical deserts who don't have access. There are people still in the United States of America who want a COVID vaccination and can't get it. The other possibility is they're working 2 minimum wage jobs to survive, and they literally don't have the time. There are millions of Americans who didn't get the second dose because they can't afford to be laid up for the 24 hours. So as much as it's one thing to go to a person that is a known anti-vaxxer, co-founder of Turning Point USA, a known propagandist, a known organization that worked to try to overthrow the U.S. government on January 6th. And there's definitely some schnutterfruit there. Excellent. You own the libs. But it's another thing to say paint Alabama and Mississippi and Arkansas and Louisiana as, well, they're just a bunch of backwards Republicans who don't want to get the vaccination. That's the wrong brush to paint. It is. And I would even say in Eastern Washington, there are pockets where that is the wrong brush to paint. We wrote the story about Watushka. I went to Watushka. I always pronounce it wrong. I know I speak perfect American, and I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. We went there. It's a food desert. It's a job desert. It's an internet desert. It's a medical desert. The town is dying. The town is angry because it's dying. There's evidence all around of its former glory, and its former glory was definitely not as glorious as the people there remember it as it was. Watashka? Is that how you say it? Watashka? I don't know. Watushka? I'm a total Pats fan and a Red Sox fan. Yes, we've talked about this. Washington, the Oregon Territory, which includes Washington State, started as a whites-only. This is one of the reasons that Washington State is barely 4% black. It is rooted in almost 200 years of history. 1844 is when the territory was founded, or 1844 is when the first exclusionary act was passed in the territory. It's almost 200 years of history. There was 200 years. No, it still echoes today. And this was, think about this. This was an area during the Great Migration where a number of black people went to. Back to my point on COVID, don't paint with a broad brush that anyone who's unvaxxed at this point doesn't want a vaccination, because it's not true. There are people in this country that just don't have access to it, or they can't take the time off to get it. They can't take the time off to recoup for it. It's a huge problem. Florida is another state. The numbers are starting to go up. As a country, our COVID numbers have plateaued. So in other words, they were just going down. It's going, and in states, they're going up. Number of deaths will start going up in a few weeks. Because if you get Delta and you're not vaccinated, it is really nasty. And Delta, the other thing we know from other countries where this has emerged, India and some data coming out of Israel, Delta's creating a larger percentage of COVID long haulers. And we're not talking COVID long haulers that have no sense of smell and no sense of taste, that could potentially have other unknown neurological disorders. It's destroying pancreases and creating lifetime diabetic patients, which that's okay. In the United States, we love diabetes. Get vaxxed. If you have people in your orbit, even if they're on the fringe, and English isn't their main language, or they're elderly, or they're poor, or they're working poor, and help them. I personally, this door-to-door plan that the Biden administration is going to do, I like if they do it in the, if they target these communities that are in these deserts, in these medical deserts, because I think they will move the needle in targeting those communities. I have concerns that people are going to get killed for knocking on the doors, going, "Hi, would you like a COVID poke? We're here to give you a COVID poke today. If you want one." I'm very concerned because we're just so gun cuckoo in this country right now. And love you too. Love you too, honey. It's Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent. She's going to have a busy day tomorrow putting people that played with fireworks a little too hard back together again. And I'm not saying that jokingly. They didn't get as many people. Like, the number's public. Like, I always kind of like, but Harborview said they had 39. Last year they had 48. But we also know that there's other people. If you go through the headlines, there's 2 people. Moses Lake, they're over here at Harborview. So she's literally going to have a day tomorrow of, putting hands and faces back together. And there'll be stuff that I can't talk about on air that I may hear over the dinner table tomorrow about amputations and stuff. I hope it isn't little kids. Little kids hit her hard. Yeah, I wouldn't sign up to go now. Hey, I'm here to give you a COVID shot. I'd be like, so I have my own body armor, so I can wear that. Do I get a ballistic helmet for this also? And also I would like the ballistic undershirt, the class 3 ballistic undershirt to protect kind of the soft squishy areas down here. I have the plate receiver that will generally keep me alive. Joseph, how are you doing? We're old school, and we're actually getting ready to wind down the show. I am really worried it's going to get people killed, but I do think it will move the needle. The thing that concerns me about Delta and Delta Plus, because there's a Delta Plus, because Delta's mutated, and Delta's now the dominant one. So we had kind of this strain, right, that came, and that's associated with China. And then we had the U.S. strain. We had our own strain, and that actually took over. There was a European strain, and our strain took over in Europe. Uh, then we had the UK strain. The UK strain wiped out the original American strain. Now we have the Delta strain, and the Delta strain is wiping out the UK strain. And the South African strain, which people were really concerned about, was the Johnson and Johnson vaccine in particular, obliterated that, and it was not able to get a hold, and it was pushed out by the UK variant, which wasn't as impacted by some of the other vaccines that are available. The South African variant was particularly weak in a good way against the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, which was one of the reasons when I was getting vaxxed much earlier in the year, I was like, I want the J&J because of its ability on the variants. Yeah, I see Pfizer's looking at wanting to do a booster. This is in part because Delta is breaking through on Pfizer. Moderna seems to be doing better. Johnson and Johnson seems to be doing better, but of the three right now, Moderna seems to be winning the horse race. By the way, that's the one Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent got. I think I made a dad joke. It went right over my head. Wow, it went right over my head. I think that's kind of all I got. I've kind of just blavulated for like an hour, right? We talked about SPOG. We dragged Mike Solon through the mug. We talked about the insurrection, talked about climate change, talked about the situation in South Carolina. We talked about flooding in New York. We talked about, I guess one thing I can do. I always like one thing I always do before I go off there, let me look at the headlines and just see if there's anything in the headlines. I will let you know that a 14-year-old black girl, 8th grader, has won the National Spelling Bee. That is the lead story when I look at this. Okay, that is her name. I'm like, her name is Zalia Avant-Garde. That's literally her name, at least according to the headlines. Britney Spears' dad is getting death threats. Danny Trejo is writing, talks about his memoir. Danny Trejo is he's a fascinating dude to me because, he turned his life around, right? I mean, he was a gang member, prison, and God, I loved the movie Machete. I know it's a total piece of trash movie. I love movies that lampoon themselves or lampoons of themselves, and I loved it. And I loved him in Bubble Boy. Oh my God, did he crack me up in Bubble Boy. And I love that he makes fun of himself in a lot of the movies that he does. Oh yeah, we haven't talked about Rudy Giuliani can't practice law in New York. Let's see if OPA has made... not OPA. SPOG was supposed to make a statement. Oh, I don't know if you all saw this. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, Danny, he's such a, yeah. And that's the other, look, the comments are blowing up about Danny Trejo. He would be in my top 25 of people I would love to meet. That's like a dude I would love to interview. That would be an amazing interview. Very fascinating. He has an amazing story, and I like him for... Not for sure, Pam. No, they're applying to say to have a movie. Dora, now there, Rex Young. That's a great movie. Yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn. There was this story that came out of Oregon. I'll tell you, one guy, he sure looks like a chud. He's wearing a chud shirt. He's got what's with the beard, right? And when I say chuds, I mean like real chuds, right? I'm not using this as a blanket term for Republicans or conservatives. I'm talking chuds. Why do they have the beard is like a uniform? You know the beard I'm talking about, right? It's like it goes from the sideburns and it just goes around, and it's not the ZZ Top beard. Oh, that's one of the others, but not as many. But they have like like it just their faces like wrapped in hair, right? He wearing a shirt. He's wearing a shirt with American flags, battleships. Yeah, that's a real Antifa shirt. Because I know that Antifa was doing this. They're big Republicans. It wasn't Trump supporters. He got the uniform beard. Anyway, somebody witnessed him and his buddy down in Oregon throwing lit fireworks out of their car and setting brush fires down in Oregon on the 4th of July. Setting fires by throwing and laughing about it. And they witnessed it. And someone called 911 over it. And they got arrested. They're wonderful. One of the mods are admins. This is in our chat. One of our mods are admins. Go ahead and drop the link. It's in our chat. Go ahead and drop the link for our audience so they can go see what these two star-spangled ding-dongs look like. So these guys were out on the 4th of July. If you're in this drought, everything's going on, and we're essentially intentionally setting fires down in Oregon. And I'm telling you, shirt with American flag and battleships and the chud beard. The uniform. What's with the beard? Shelly, your cousin worked with him? See, this is the other thing why I would be where I would like to meet him. I've never heard a bad thing about Danny T. Never. I've never read a bad thing. I've never heard a bad thing about him. I know he is wicked respected. Oh my God, Dora. Oh my goodness. There you go. Someone just dropped the links. So there you go. I know on that link, because that's a news break link. And so I know if you're on mobile, and if you click that link on mobile, it's going to go, you want to download the app. But then you could just kind of search for this headline, right? And it'll come up. Oh, Shell, I totally remember them blaming Antifa over this. And don't forget, we had some people in law enforcement who lost their jobs because they were metaphorically fanning the flames that it was Antifa that was doing this. I am not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything here. Yeah, I'm not seeing, again, SPOG and SPD both said they were going to do press releases when this report came out, and they both quiet. So, and as we pointed out on our Twitter, Mike Solon on January 7th tweeted that the insurrection was Antifa, and he retweeted Andy No. He didn't implicitly write a tweet that said, but retweeted Andy No, like, here you go, facts, it was Antifa. And he was actually, there were calls for him to resign as SPOG president. There were calls for him to, resign as a police officer. But because the SPOG contract is written the way that it is, the city has no power to actually fire a police officer for misconduct, unlike what they were able to do in South Carolina. You're not woke, Seattle. You're not woke. South Carolina more woke than you. That SPOG contract is a piece of crap. Unless you're in SPOG. And then it's amazing. So, and then of course I had my little thing. And, in my little thing, Mike asked if he was part of the resistance now, right? Back on. And so SPOG did everything they could to try and block the investigation from OPA into those officers, and has filed a grievance over the information that the OPA has asked for. So I guess Mike Solon's part of Antifa, because if 1-6 was Antifa and it wasn't Trump supporters, and 6 SPD officers went there, and 2 SPD officers are now up for being fired, according to Mike Solon, they're Antifa. So, Mike, I guess you are part of the resistance. Antifa welcomes you, Mike. Really? This my neurodivergent brain, Ursinate. Oh my god. This is the crazy thing. I will remember this piece of information in my neurodivergent brain for the rest of my life. I won't remember what I had for dinner tomorrow morning. But I will totally remember this stuff here that you just had about Zalia Avant-Garde. That is just crazy. Anyway, I'm not seeing anything from Spog. Open arms. Open with arms wide open. Welcome to this world. We'll show you everything with arms wide open. With arms wide open. Oh my goodness gracious. Probably going to get like a DMCA takedown now. Yeah, definitely not literally. Let's see. There was a 5.9 earthquake in the Nevada-California border. Everyone in California goes, "What was that?" And then just went back to doing whatever they do. Oh, did you see this thing where Remington? What was? Wait. This is friggin' horrible. Yeah. So the Sandy Hook families. Whose Instagram? Oh my God, her Instagram? Whose Instagram? Wait, what? Who? What? Whose Instagram? You have to tell me whose Instagram in the comments. Remington Guns was sued by Sandy Hook families, and this has been going back and forth. And they asked for documentation as part of legal discovery, and Remington sent over 10,000 cartoons completely unrelated to their discovery within the discovery documents that they sent over. You know, basically as here's a bunch of cartoons. Go screw yourself. Literally, that's what Remington did. This is what corporate America thinks about a bunch of dead children in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. Whose Instagram? Who are we talking about? Yeah, so totally friggin' gross what they did. Roger, absolutely. One of the things, though, is there are every year. Oh, it's Zalia's Instagram. Every year. 2020 wasn't unique with arsonists or human-caused fires. The other thing, Roger, and I'm not saying this defensively, the other thing is, of those 14, there are people, at the end of the day, they're charged with arson, right? If you create a wildfire because a gender reveal party went bad, right? There is no charge of, I fucked up, right? That's arson. So, yes, 14, but it happens every year. 14 over 3 states. Every year, people intentionally set wildfires. There is typically not political motivation attached to that. We know there was the one individual that did down off of Highway 167 close to Puyallup, right? This individual has a mental health history, had a prior criminal history. There's nothing. They got mental problems. And then this, I could go on a whole nother hour on it. Yeah, that's exactly it, and that's my point. Amara, there is no I screwed up charge. Arson with an I screwed up, I didn't mean it charge. It just you should have known better than blowing up 100 pounds of colored tannerite to go. It's a boy. It's a wildfire. So And again, it happens every year. So let's see. Let me just look at one more site for headlines, and then we're going to call it up here. Let's see. California governor is asking residents to voluntarily cut off water. Afghanistan's turning into a shit show. Boy, that's another one. Like I could do just a whole hour on Afghanistan. There's no good answers there. Um, Afghanistan has never been defeated. I think that's the best way to put it. We didn't win there. All we did was 20 years is push the rubble around, right? Soviets came in and created a bunch of rubble. Then the Taliban took over after the Soviets left and created even more rubble. Then we've shown up and we've just pushed the rubble around and made even more rubble. And now we're leaving, and there's even more rubble. And that's it. Yeah, exactly. Carla, right now, that is true. Right now in the Pacific Northwest and California, it's a lot of lightning. That's what we're seeing. Like British Columbia, there are some human caused in British Columbia. There are some concerns that part of the complex of fires around Lytton was human caused. The fire that tore through Lytton specifically is to believe to be lightning caused. But there is right now a couple of human caused, but right now it's a lot of lightning. I'm just scanning headlines real quick. Yeah, it's clickbait. Oh, there's one other thing. Missouri's in competition with Florida right now. Their governor is just like, which one of us can be just? So Missouri's one of 22 states that cut unemployment, federal unemployment benefits, under the banner of people don't want to work. That's why we can't get anybody. And so they're just sitting at home collecting their paycheck, collecting unemployment, and that's why. So they cut the numbers. Now, this gets a little complicated. If you end somebody's unemployment compensation, they don't show up as unemployed. They do, but they don't. There are actually 6 figures that are used by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's where our unemployment numbers come on. U1, U2, U3, U4, U5, U6. U3 is the number that gets published. If you can't collect unemployment, you're not counted in the U3. You're counted in the bigger numbers up the line. So one of the immediate effects that you have is when you cut people off of unemployment is you drop the unemployment number. I mean, this should be obvious, Dave, to Camp Stupid for anybody that has more than 2 functional brain cells in their head. Brain cell number 1 is beating heart. Brain cell number 2 is breathing. So then the third functioning brain cell should then understand that if you terminate unemployment for people and have essentially forced them off unemployment, then the number of people that are unemployed go down, right? Derp! So Missouri is one of 22 states that have done this, and their U3 unemployment number actually went up after they did this. Now, there's reasons for this that have happened. First of all, when they did the cut, their unemployment numbers were 4.1%. In the United States, you are considered at full employment. If you've ever done Economics 101, full employment is considered around 5% unemployment. And people go, no, full employment is when everyone's employed. The lowest unemployment in the history of the United States was in 1944. It was 1.2%. There will always be a percentage of people that are fired, quit, have to leave the job market because of medical issues or a family issue. There are people who are working part-time because that's part of the U6. U6 number is, yes, I am working, but I am not working in my chosen field of vocation, and I am working part-time because it is that or don't work. So that's in that U6 number. And so You have to understand how the numbers are calculated. So Missouri was already below uh, full employment, which is a good thing. And so you could build an argument that ending federal benefits there made sense because they were 4.1. Well, the thing is, after they cut it, job applications didn't go up. And unemployment actually went up, even though they took steps to cut the number of people off on unemployment, which kind of points to there probably wasn't a lot of people that were on unemployment in the first place and long-term unemployment that would have lost their benefits. All they've lost is the $300 kicker from the federal government. They still qualify for unemployment within the state of Missouri. It's God, so friggin'. This country, man, this country. What they said confirmed from the other side. Who said? Yes, absolutely. And we have a person on our team who is truly an expert on wildfires. Anyway, Missouri's just like in this race to the bottom with Florida and how bad can we screw things. They've already, like Missouri governors, we don't want anybody coming in with that COVID shot. Screw that. And like their state is rapidly becoming one of the worst states in the country for Delta infections. I don't understand this political strategy of killing off your base. It blows my mind. High altitude smoke. Right now, we are in a pretty normal summer weather pattern. We will probably see some temperatures. We're going to see temperatures doing this. Last couple of days have actually been very normal early July summer days for us. But we are going to see some days that we're going to be 5-10 degrees above average and go back down. There isn't a drop of rain as far as we can see. It is too early. We're only on the 8th. So it's too early. We need about 10 more days in the weather models before we can start looking and going. Are we going to have a dry July? Will we have a rainless July? What's fascinating to me, if somebody were to say to me, David, have we ever had a month where it didn't rain in Seattle? Like for the entire month. And I mean a calendar month, not like a 30-day window that straddles months. I would have said yes. I actually would have said yes without blinking. And I said, let me go look it up. But there's got to be like an August or a July where it just never rained here because guess what? We haven't. July of 1960 is our driest month on record, and that was 0.03 inches of rain. We've never had a fully dry month. I can say, looking 10 days out, there's really no rain in the forecast to speak of. We're just getting drier and drier and drier. I lived across the river from Missouri for 3 years. I don't recommend. Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent and I were accidental tourists in St. Louis. And I have to say, we enjoyed the city. We really did. The Arch was a bit of a disappointment. The Arch was. I went there as a kid, and it just wasn't as cool as I remembered as a grown up. Rex, I know. But we actually enjoyed. We enjoyed the city, and there were a lot of what we saw. We thought it was and I know it's a city that has a ton of problems. But yeah, Missouri, Missouri. Oh, Missouri. Just, this is the same state. It's like, we're not going to enforce any gun laws. We're so in trouble. I could just go off on another hour on this, but I'm not to. I've scanned the headlines, kind of giving you, the breaking news 411 here. Be good to each other, malcontents. I think that's really what it comes down to. I call it misery. You're not the only one. You are not the only one. I know lots of people that call it misery. Same thing. We love St. Louis, and we loved all the people we met. Everybody we met was really nice. As they said, like the The arch was like whatever. I actually took some of the best photographs of my life in St. Louis. I have some pictures using wide angle lens, like 14 millimeter, 16 millimeter of the arch, right at like golden hour, when the lighting is just amazing. Everyone here is talking about Midwest nice. Nicest city I've ever been in my life was Nashville. I've never been in a city where people were so flipping nice there. I had only one person, and actually, the one person that wasn't nice, it was awful. To the point, it was a taxi cab driver. And I actually called the number. They have the number there, like, if you got come around. I called. And I'm the person that will put up with a lot of shit because I generally don't like getting people in trouble. I get it. People have bad days. People go off the rails. And it was just so egregious. And I called the number, and I'm talking to the to the woman, and the the woman's like, in the Nashville accent, and there is kind of this accent, there's a little bit of a twang, and she's like, "Is that our driver?" I'm like, "Yes, that's your driver talking." She said, "You tell him right now," and I'm like, "Okay." She's telling me to tell you something. You tell him he's done. It's like he's done. He's not getting calls. He needs to get. She's telling me to tell you because you're done. And you need to come in. And then he starts like scream, like I'm playing a game of telephone between the person and the stuff. And then I hear over the radio, the dispatcher is like, "You need to get your ass back." And I was like, "Well, something's going to happen. It's fine." Long story, I know. Nashville, everybody was so flipping nice. And I'm going to close with a personal story about Nashville. This is a cool story. I've been to Nashville a few times, all of it work related, working for a tech company. And we were staying at the Opry, and we're not staying at the Opry, but we're staying at what's the huge indoor resort there? The Gaylord Resort. And at the time, I don't know if that's still the case. The Gaylord Resort in Nashville was, or may still be, the largest non-casino hotel in the world. If you've never been to the Gaylord Resort in Nashville, you could very easily like film a movie in there that this is a dystopian future. The elite have moved to comfortable dome cities, and the zombies live outside the dome. Everything is inside, and like they have rivers and plants and jungles, and there's like literally like alligators in the inside rivers and stuff, and there's places to sit, and you go and walk, and there's just restaurants on the paths, and they have an amazing spa there. Oh my god, it's a whole separate story. It really has this. The year is 2300. The outside air has been polluted. Zombies rule the land. But inside the dome cities, they still have it good. It's really weird feel. And I was a presenter at this event. And so as a presenter, and we were presenting at the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, the Opry. That was the theater that this company was using to have their employees come in for these presentations. And so we got to go all backstage. These areas were set up for us to prepare for our presentations and essentially have green rooms. You're not familiar with a green room term is where it's snacks and it's your room to chill before your time to go on stage. So I'm in a dressing room in the Grand Ole Opry, and there's a piano, and I don't play, but I play. I always say I plink, and then I sit down, and people are like, well, it's a little more than plink, and I plink. I'm not by any means. There's a piano in my dressing room, and I sit down because and it helps. It helps with kind of getting into the zone. And I start playing on that piano, and I'm just kind of plinking and playing. It's got great tone. It's a tiny bit out of tune. It's got just a little bit, just great tone, great feel. And then I stopped, and I was so overwhelmed with this thought. Who has played this piano. Who's played this piano? I'm playing this piano. Who the hell else has played this piano? Piano didn't look new. Piano looked like it had been there for a while. It's overwhelming, magnificent thought. And if you're not familiar with country music or the Grand Ole Opry, I went through this whole country music phase. On the Grand Ole Opry, because the Opry's not in its original location, right? It was moved some time ago, and there's a spot on the floor. There's a round spot where the performers stand, and this round spot is the original floor to the Opry. It's like about a 3-foot circle of pretty worn wood. And that's where we stood to present, because that's kind of like where everything is optimized there from a lighting standpoint. Right? So at the end of the day, the facilitators are the Grand Ole Opry. So you're up there presenting, and you're standing in this circle. I stood in the same circle as like Garth Brooks. I literally stood on the same piece of floor, and with the lights and sound, I'm not singing, but presented, Carla, totally one of the thoughts I had. What stories could this piano tell? This piano probably could tell some amazing stories and some really terrible stories. Keith Whitley was completely passed out in a pool of his own vomit on this piano, and I say that with utmost respect, because the death of Keith Whitley he was an amazing talent, and what a friggin' waste. Garth Brooks and Keith Whitley would have stood in that circle. Oh, sure. I mean, absolutely. You start thinking about that, right? You've got Patsy Cline stood in that circle. Absolutely. Johnny Cash stood in that circle. I stood in this circle. Just an amazing, amazing piece that came up there. This is like the time I sat in the chair in the boardroom where the founder of Fidelity regularly sat. Nice. Oh, this is one other thing. I'll close on this little story. It turns out that we're so deep in the late stage capitalism that the bankers who are making all this money don't want to even pay the junior bankers anymore. And the junior bankers are now getting all pissed off and quitting because they're not getting paid enough money to pay off all their student loan debts, to go to schools like Wharton, to become bankers, to become millionaires. And they're like, I'm never going to become a millionaire, and screw it. That's how deep we are into late stage capitalism. And on that, you've never heard of Keith Whitley? Really? So Keith Whitley, he's an amazing singer, great voice. He killed himself. He did he did Leaving Las Vegas. He died of alcohol poisoning. Excuse me. He was married to Lori. Hers is a heartbreaking story too. I think she's been widowed 3 times. Lori Morgan was married to Lori Morgan. He actually has a song that is it was released on an album after he died, and it has this very, very kind of Beatles White Album, a Beatles Let It Be kind of feel, where there's some stuff on there that's clearly raw and unfinished. And he has this song, Tell Lori I Love Her. It's a heart-wrenching song. He probably was very deeply in love, but, just this really troubled soul, and drank himself to death. And Lori Morgan has had her own problems. As I said, I think she's been widowed. I know at least twice, maybe 3 times, bankrupt, super talented woman also. And just a really, really sad story. I have no idea about Keith's, politics or views on things. And it's like, this is so far in the past at this point. It's like, this was a period of time when he was still alive, where we didn't necessarily care about stuff because people like that didn't put it in your face. And country music wasn't so political as it is today. Country music in the late country. I look at the golden age of country music, and I could tell by some of the people on here. I'm going to get roasted for some of that. No, Chris Gaines is not country music. Oh my God! Like I don't know what Garth Brooks was thinking. I'm sure if there's something that Garth Brooks would want to erase, it's Chris Gaines. Um, One of the things on country music, I consider the golden age, the '80s into '90s, up to about Shania Twain arriving. I actually feel Shania Twain ruined country music because it was like we're just going full pop. We're going pop. And then 9/11, it just got all super political and very right wingy, and now a lot of country music just sounds the same to me and has this very pop quality to it. There's some exceptions and there's some fun songs. Red Solo Cup was a super fun song. Red Solo Cup is one of these songs, and Toby Keith's kind of a bag of smack. But I think everyone can associate a full Red Solo Cup and associating it with just having a good time. I know. I said I'm going to get roasted for this. I know I'm going to get roasted for this. I feel that the '80s to the mid '90s is kind of the pinnacle of country music because you had all of this blending of traditional country, but blending it with some Southern rock. And there was experimentation that was going on with some more blues. And you had some really thoughtful music that came out of this era. Pirates of the Caribbean, Feed Jake. Uh, you, there's not a country artist that could do Feed Jake today. Seriously, look, if you don't like country music, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. Pirates of the Mississippi. Look up the lyrics of Feed Jake. If you can find the video is not in circulation. But if you can find the video, go watch the video and have a tissue. Because you're going to be stunned that Feed Jake was a country song. Sawyer's Brown, Cafe on the Corner. Sawyer Brown, again, all these years. That's friggin' profound song. That's wickedly profound. Alabama, which I know has done some trashy music, and we kind of called out Song of the South, not the movie, but the Alabama Song of the South, which was Alabama did a remake of it. It's not the song they originally did. But Pass It On Down. Seminole Wind from John Anderson. That's another one. Seminole Wind is actually that's like country music for people who don't like country music. Although John Anderson's more of an old school, right? Because I know he was singing in the 70s. I don't know if he goes as far back as the 60s, right? Seminole Wind, Steve Earle. Yeah, Steve Earle's great. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Kind of like pre Shania Twain, pre Grundy County incident. Oh my God, did I hate that song? Hey, little lady, will you give me a sign? Oh my God, that was just nails on a chalkboard. Susie Boggess. Oh my God, did I have a crush on Susie Boggess? Susie Boggess, Hey Cinderella. Mary Chapin Carpenter. Just about every Mary Chapin. Here's another one. Mary Chapin Carpenter, Stones in the Road. You want 45, 50 minutes of just go listen to Mary Chapin Carpenter's Stones in the Road. Like the whole friggin' album. Well, Dolly Parton transcends things. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Tremendous soundtrack. I just rewatched that. Just such a fabulous movie, and in rewatching it, I forgot about how good the soundtrack is. And one of the things that I loved about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is it did bring back this revival. So also did the movie Walk the Line of these, tremendous pioneering country music artists. And Joy, this is part of the reason why I don't consider artists that come out of the era of the 50s and the 60s as necessarily the golden age of country music, because it was a lot of rebranding of black music and grabbing that and putting that in there. As you kind of start moving into the mid 80s and the mid 90s, country music started more to become its own thing. And there was all of this experimentation that still reached back to these roots, but then pulling in to other influences. The black influence was always there. I am not minimizing that. But then it started to pull through. And then, as I said, Don't Take the Girl, Grundy County Incident, uh, That Don't Impress Me month with Shania Twain, and just all. Yeah, I guess Garth Brooks kind of did his Chris Gainey kind of thing, and you had artists like Marty Stewart, Travis Tritt, these rockabilly artists, right? They started to fade out because you had this pop stuff moving on, and Alan Jackson just started making songs that all sounded the same. Alan Jackson, like Midnight, seriously, the song Midnight in Montgomery just popped in my head, and I literally just got chills when that song popped in my head. Rockabilly's great. Like Marty Stewart's great stuff. Cats. He did the song "A Thousand Miles from Nowhere." He "Fast Like You" because he dated Sharon Stone for like 8 weeks. Oh my God, I can't think of the guy's name. Fantastic rockabilly artist. And he was running with that same crowd. It was Travis Tritt, Marty Stewart. Damn it. I could see his face. I can't think of his name. I just I'm like looking it up who it is. Dwight Yoakam. Reverend Horton Heat. Damn, that's one I haven't heard in a long time. Anyway, that's why I think the 80s and 90s. But Pirates of the Mississippi. Again, seriously, Pirates of the Mississippi. Look up the lyrics to Feed Jake. If you can find the video, because the video is not in circulation. If you can find the original video, watch the original video, have a, yes, Dwight Yoakam, have a tissue. Because, damn, that song is, if anything, that song's almost predicted in some ways to where we are today. Another one is, of course, you got Reba McEntire, who transcends across multiple eras in there. Colin Ray. This is another dude. Little Rock. Colin Ray's Little Rock, not to be confused with Reba McEntire's Little Rock. That's same thing. Video, holy crap. The song hasn't aged in the sense because there are references in there. Like one of the lines is, I got a job in Arkansas selling VCRs at a Walmart. What's the hell's a VCR? So that's another one. Colin Ray, Little Rock. These are songs with soul. And Mary Chapin Carpenter. Oh my! You got to see her in concert. Oh my God! So jelly. Oh my God! Played by request. Thank you so much for. It was hysterical. So we knew they were watching the stream. Oh, just please don't play Achy Breaky Heart. They stopped playing the song and Achy Breaky Heart started playing. It's like, well, they're taking requests. We started shouting out requests. And then they were like, oh man, they're just messing with us. We're not going to play the requests. Charlie Pride, that's old school stuff. Charlie Pride. But again, Mary Chapin Carpenter, Stones in the Road. That is, I would describe, because is it country music or is it not country music? Right, that one's kind of. and that's why, like, if you kind of like folk, Mary J. McCarthy's Stone of the Road, and there's a couple of songs in there have a tissue. Um, yeah, Mary J. McCarpenter is just amazing. She comes across to me as a wounded soul, but I think that's what makes her music so amazing. And totally. Now you see, yeah. Now Southern Nights is interesting to me, right? Because you have this Southern Nights, and Glenn Campbell had like the perfect voice for that song. But Southern Nights was kind of this crossover. It was a country song, but it got pop play, and it got a lot of AM radio play. Oh, dude, Stones of the Road, man, you're just no regrets that you've downloaded this. It's just a great. You know, if I could ask Joan Baez one question, right? What is one of Joan Baez's signature songs? The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, right? Song about the Confederate flag, song romanticizing the Confederacy. This is one of her signature songs, right? If you say Joan Baez, this is one of the first songs I think that's going to pop into people's heads. I would, if I could interview Joan Baez, I would be very interested in getting her perspective on how she feels today about doing that song. Everybody, like, we've just gone totally off the rails on a country music conversation here. Independence Day by Martina McBride. That was probably just as I was starting to give up on country music, but that is a good song. I know seem to remember that's kind of into that mid 90s. I think we're just right to the, but at the time, right? The time was different, but it is interesting because, first of all, it's a great version of the song. Right, let's see. There's the band. That's literally the name of the group. The band did a version of the night the night you drove Old Dixie Down, and that version it's kind of terrible, right? It kind of sounds like they're just sounds like they're drunk, and it's just not this right. It's very downbeat and all. And Joan Baez's version is a lot more powerful. Joan Baez is a storyteller in her voice when she sings. But it just doesn't align to Joan Baez. So it's very interesting to me. It's like, why did you record it in the first place? Clearly some record executive, we need to put this on the air. This is a hit, Joan. This is a hit. We're going to put it, I don't know if she has a Facebook page. The band has always been one of the cringiest names to me. Willie Nelson is just on a whole different plane, right? Where do you put Willie Nelson? Like, Willie Nelson is like there with Johnny Cash, right? Johnny Cash is just on a whole different plane. What did Trent Reznor say after Johnny Cash did Hurt? That's not my song anymore. Like, Johnny Cash just owned my song. It's his. It's not my song anymore. I'm paraphrasing. That's basically what they said. Interesting story. Johnny Cash, when he did Hurt, right, because it's just when he does his version of Hurt, first of all, Johnny Cash had a long history with drug addiction. And so this is had to have what resonated in the song. He recorded that 6 weeks after June died. And I think that is one of the reasons why Johnny Cash's version of Hurt is so powerful, because in the moment that he recorded this had to be one of his lowest moments, but at the same token, at that same moment, because he had been sober for years and he was clear from that, right, it was crystal clear to him. Everything was crystal clear to him. And so this, you can have it all, my empire of dirt, This is 6 weeks after the love of his life died. And this history of drug addiction, right? The needle, tears the skin, this old familiar sting. I mean, he's singing his life. And when you hear his version of Hurt, you feel it and you know it. And it is amazing. And it is bittersweet is the exact word. That is the perfect word for it, K Variable. That is the perfect word for it. And this whisper at the end, if I will find a way, and after just this powerful buildup, and Reznor's version of it is very good, also in its own respect. But it's funny. Someone says Willie Nelson, and it's like, and I don't put Joan Baez with Willie Nelson, right? Willie Nelson is just Johnny Cash is. Patsy Cline is, and of course, died way too young. Who knows? Dolly Parton. If we're talking country music artists, right? They're just in this whole different league. It'll be interesting, if I look at somebody like Garth Brooks. I don't know, right? Because Garth Brooks is still alive and he's still making music and still doing his thing. So you can't say at this point. Dolly Parton, of course, is around, but she's moved really more into philanthropy. Willie Nelson, if I think of, Johnny Cash is dead. Willie Nelson is doing his kind of, he still does some singing, but he can barely sing at this point, right? So, oh my goodness. Gordon Lightfoot. I adore Gordon Lightfoot. One of the most underrated folk musicians of the 20th century. Loretta Lynn, boom, there you go. That's another one. Loretta Lynn, off the chart. They're not here. They're not nya. They're off the chart. They're in a whole different galaxy. Yeah, and like Garth Brooks, I think there needs to be some more years on Garth Brooks for them to be in another era. But yeah, Gordon Lightfoot is a huge guilty pleasure of mine. Gordon, just one of the most underrated singer-songwriters of the 20th century. I think, people know him for Wreck of the Edmunds Fitzgerald and If You Could Read My Mind and Sundown. And I think those are the three songs that people know him for. And then most people, I would say, probably know him for Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And then some people think it's just a terrible song, and people who love ballads think it's an amazing song. Jesus, see, this is another dude I would love to see is Lightfoot. It's so funny. Y'all are loving this content. George Jones is a fascinating, right? George Jones, big drinking problem and stuff. And so he had to crank out all these crappy albums because he was just constantly in debt. Vince Gill did this song, Give Me One Last Chance. And it's, so Vince Gill does this song, Give Me One Last Chance. And, it's basically about a guy who's married and he's just constantly getting in trouble. And, when his baby just give me one last chance. And part of the song is hides the car keys because she doesn't want him going to the bar for the night. And the car goes, she may have hid my car keys, but she forgot about my old John Deere. That song is about George Jones. It is a true story. George Jones had been in multiple drunk driving wrecks. His wife at the time hid his car keys, and he drove his John Deere tractor to the bar. It is a true story. I have Gordon Lightfoot's greatest hits CD, and it just has all these songs that I would presume if you don't live in Canada, you have never heard. There's not a bad song. Like Hangdog Hotel. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Hangdog Hotel. Race Around the Ruins. Man, I went through an ugly breakup. I'm glad that was a CD because that was a tape. I would have worn it out. Race Among the Ruins. Yeah, Gen X getting totally nostalgic on all their music tonight. Garth Brooks, we're just off the rails. We'll keep talking about this for a little while longer because everyone's loving this country music talk right now. Garth Brooks, Welcome to my neurodivergent brain. Uh, I learned this about Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks orders his songs on his releases from his least favorite to his favorite. So the last song, so if you grab any Garth Brooks CD or download, the last song is Garth Brooks's favorite song of that particular album, and the first song is his least favorite. And that's what he said. That's how he orders the songs. The greatest Garth Brooks song for me. Oh, Shell, I could told I saw Brooks and Dunn in concert. They're amazing in concert, and there's actually a song of theirs also that's like in this. Oh, love this song. And I have kind of this weird affinity to this song, to Texas, and I guess I'll get into that story because you all are just totally sucking in right now. I don't consider Carole King country. And I don't consider James Taylor country. I consider both of them folk. Jim Croce, singer-songwriter. Jim Croce is the first artist as a little kid. I cried. When he died, I was a little teeny, tiny, tiny kid, and and I just adored him. And it was on the news, and I like Jim Croce, and they showed kind of the picture of the airplane and stuff. And I remember it's like one of my first memories. I'm a little teeny, tiny kid, and I'm like, like when my parent, like he died, and I just bawled. I remember this so vividly. Love the Judds. Anyway, back to Garth Brooks. Favorite song, Wolves. This is another one. Wolves it's a very country song. So it's one of these songs, like I'm saying, like Stones in the Road is a good one to download. If you're not a fan of country music, you like folk, listen to Stones in the Road. It's kind of a gateway drug into 80s and 90s country. Wolves, that's more country. So if you just don't like country, you're probably not going to like Wolves. If you haven't listened to Wolves by Garth Brooks and you're curious about 80s, 90s country, go download Wolves and listen to that. Powerful songs. One of my favorite songs I've done in karaoke. Shell, Wolves is it truly about as country as you can get, because it kind of checks a lot of the. There's nothing about drinking, and there's nothing about mama. There is job loss. There's no divorce, so it doesn't quite check all the boxes. But Wolves is an amazing song. Cat Stevens, singer-songwriter. The Judds, let's see, who are we going to talk about? Brooks and Dunn. Brooks and Dunn, Red Dirt Road. I love that song. And I have this affinity to Texas. It brings some memories back to me. I did not grow up in an era with the Red Dirt Road. I grew up in Massachusetts, moved to Texas when I was in my 20s. I was there for 8 years. My parents lived in a very rural area in Texas, deep East Texas, and so would visit up there. First few months was there, then moved down to Houston for work, and I would go up there and visit. And there were many back roads, and I made friends, and got pretty ingrained into the country music culture. And my politics at the time were not as far to the right as people were in Texas, but I wasn't the liberal that I am today. And so I was able to blend in, with there. I was able to blend in and stuff. No, it's called Red Dirt Road. There's this, it talks about a big part of it is just memories associated with red clay dirt roads. And that really resonated with me. Mark Chestnut, saw him in concert. Another one. Mark Chestnut, just amazing. And then just died. Was very heartbreaking for me to die. Hal Ketchum. Hal Ketchum is one of the most underrated country music artists in the last 40 years. This is another one. Hal Ketchum, Past the Point of Rescue. That's another. You want to go download some, right? Hal Ketchum, Past the Point of Rescue. Go download that. There is not a bad song on that album. Not one. He was such a talent, and then he just started to have all of these health problems, nothing related to drinking or drugs, just tons of health problems. There's just not one bad song on It's essentially his debut album. It's his first big album, but just oh man. But Brooks and Dunn's amazing in concert, which they're entertainers, right? Uh, and the things about Brooks and Dunn is they're legit musicians. They're super talented. I know, like they kind of broke up. They had this little bit of falling out, but there's good, not in a creepy. Oh no, I shouldn't say in a creep, but when I say chemistry, I mean it's performer chemistry. Um, there's chemistry between them when they perform, and they're just amazing performers. Just they're great. They're just great to see in concert, and a lot of their music is fun. There isn't necessarily too many thoughtful. They don't have, again, I was rattling off thoughtful songs. Feed Jake, Pass It On Down, Seminole Wind, Little Rock, All These Years, Cafe on the Corner. These are just like six that come right off of the top of my head, which are these very thoughtful songs steeped in messages about you know getting help if you have alcoholism, protecting the environment, stuff that country music could never do today. Um, yeah, they really do. And Brooks and Dunn, they're kind of like country music artists for people that hate country music. They're because a lot of their songs are just fun, like Boot Scoot and Boogie. I mean, I don't know how well Boot Scoot and Boogie has aged. I think Neon Moon from them is timeless. I think there are certain songs that are timeless. I'm going to jump genres. The Cars, Just What I Needed. That song is pushing 50 years old. It's going to be 50 years old in 1976, Malcontents. If you want to feel old. The Cars, Just What I Needed. That song sounds as fresh as the day that it came out. There's very little that you would need to do to take The Cars, Just What I Needed, to modernize it and, essentially do. And I don't know if anyone's ever done a cover of it because it's just so perfect, right? There are these songs that come along that are just timeless. And Neon Moon from this is funny as a photographic music memory. This is probably part of my neurodivergence. I am an encyclopedia of music knowledge and a encyclopedia of lyrics. It is stunning. Yeah, Rick Ocasek, very sad that died. Was an amazing artist here. Yeah, Just What I Needed is 45 freaking years old song. Neon Moon. There's another one. Go download it or whatever. You haven't listened to it. Go listen to it. This has the same timeless quality. Now you would probably have to tweak it. You'd have to where The Cars, Just What I Needed needs almost no tweaking. You could release it today, and people would be like, "Wow, this is real timeless." And Shell, I agree. Neon Moon has that exact same quality of you could re-release it with some very small tweaks from its original version, just modernize some of the instruments. I don't know if there's like any, there's a lot of music that kind of like 70s and 80s, like they have the synthesizer stuff, and it just didn't age. What's interesting is The Cars does have synthesizer in there, but it's aged well. And another song, like this just popped in my head. I was driving to Mixed Coffee for the grand opening, and I'm just mashing the button on radio stations. Oh my goodness. It's an Emerson, like I'm just going to go totally off the rails here. Yeah, it is. I got to confirm this is the right song. Yeah. Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, In the Beginning. Timeless. Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. Oh my God. Pam. The Eurythmics, total plate of shrimp moment here. We're like going all over the place here with music. Okay. Yeah, Emerson, Lake and Palmer in the beginning, totally timeless song. If you haven't, like, I hadn't heard that song in like 20 years, and when it came on, I was like, this song has aged so incredibly well. Eurythmics, Annie Lennox. This video, I might get accused of some misogyny here, so I'm just gonna just put it right out in front. Um, as a product of the 80s and as a product of MTV, I was going through channels and MTV, like one of the alternate MTV channels will run like a block of 80s videos. And the Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, was a video they played. And I just remember, as somebody from a small town in Massachusetts, right, here is this incredibly, Annie Lennox is just an amazing talent, amazingly intelligent, and she is amazingly beautiful. And I am a sea of raging teenage hormones at this time. And here is this amazingly beautiful woman with the dyed orange Johnny Rotten hair, with a haircut like mine, but of course the hair goes all the way forward, which where I'm growing up, you've never seen this, and she's wearing a suit. And she has the riding crop, right? She's going with the riding crop, going like this, Sweet dreams are made of like, sweet dreams are definitely made of this. I've been a bad boy, Annie. I've been a very, very bad boy. Totally bored by radio. So anyway, just this was one. My first thoughts of Annie Lennox were unnatural. We'll just leave it at that. Um, and a lot of their music has aged incredibly well. You know what a Eurythmic song I think that is kind of timeless. There's a ton of them, but one I think is Would I Lie to You? This has this real timeless quality to it to me. Was a huge Sex Pistol fans, and I loved Public. God, what was his thing? Public Limited. It's not Public Relations or stuff. God, I can't remember. I love his stuff so much. I can't. He did a song Seattle. We actually old school, like really old school Malcontent. We would play a clip of Johnny Rotten. Is he a chud? No. He's a chud? Public Image Limited. Thank you. Yes, thank you. His stuff in Public Image. He has a song Seattle, and we would actually play Seattle as a from Public Image Limited. We actually were playing at that as a transition piece between stories. We would just play that like a little 10-second clip. So, oh, this is so sad. He's a super chud. I know Eric Clapton went full chud. Oh yes, rises tremendous. Seattle is why did a bunch of these punk rock artists go chud? I know he's not the only one. There's a number of punk rock artists from the 70s and 80s that are full on chuds now. And it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, I think we've gone far enough. We're like totally off the rails. So anyway, I gave you a ton of music homework for next week. We will be back to Monday, Thursday next week. We will be back in Studio 3 next week. We will be back to having guests on the show next week. I know, like, he's a chud. Yeah, Clapton went full chud. Clapton, oh man, Clapton went full friggin' chud. Okay, Steve Miller, like, I know we're like going total random with the music, and you all are like, no, we're gonna keep him going in the music conversation. Steve Miller Band, like, I put Steve Miller Band where I was putting, where I'm putting like Johnny Cash, right? There's nya, Steve Miller Band is nya, right? The thing about Steve Miller Band is like you'll hear a song, and you're like, who is that? That's Steve Miller Band. really? Then you'll hear some other song, and you're like, who's that? Steve Miller Band, right? They have so many different songs and styles in their songs, and they cross all this. Clapton is a total chud, y'all. Oh my goodness, yes, Clapton is a total chud. He is a total chud. Boom, there you go. Clapton's a chud. Steely Dan. Steely Dan's another one, right? They're this uh, defying different formats there. So yeah, he's an anti-vax chud. He went like it's like, look, if you really like Eric Clapton, don't click the like because you're just gonna be like, no, 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 not Eric, no. Yeah, that's exactly it, Rex. I'm loving this conversation. Yeah, exact right. Totally different. Yeah, totally different songs. Big Jet Airliner, one of probably to me one of the most recognizable guitar riffs. That whole opening, right? Fleetwood Mac's complicated for me. I like Fleetwood Mac's earlier stuff. There's definitely some stuff in there where it's not Christine McVie. Oh my God. I'm drawing a blank. Right. See, here's the neurodivergent brain. Um, love the Clash. My musical journey has been really bizarre. Like people are saying, so I kind of grew up on like AM rock. Um, because I grew up in a small town and that there was an AM radio station in our town. We actually had an old school AM crystal radio from GE, and the, the signal from the towers were so strong that you could listen to the radio, you could tune the radio to station without turning it on, and you could hear the station faintly playing through the crystals. So I that's what I cut my teeth on. Then there's radio station WAAF in Worcester, and they played a lot of like Southern rock. Um, I'm now my eyes are a little bit more open to who they were catering to, and so I grew up to like the Outlaws and Skinnerd and Outlaws, and actually Marshall Tucker band. A lot of these bands are actually kind of hippie jam bands, but they're not hippie jam bands. But you go to an Outlaws concert, you're not probably drinking beer, right? And an ACDC and stuff. And then I went into this whole punk and first wave phase. So you know, Clash and Sex Pistols, the B-52s. By the way, Cosmic Thing I think is one of the greatest albums of all time. And then all of the '80s first wave and punk stuff, all of it, and that was my jam. And then I moved to Texas, and I went into this whole country music phase. Um, I I was forced into country music. Meatloaf was amazing. Meatloaf, just the same thing. Bat Out of Hell. Bat Out of Hell is one of the greatest albums of all time, and Bat Out of Hell is just on another planet. Um, B-52s are just like every. I got to see them in concert. They were amazing. I got to see the B-52s in concert. They were amazing. They're still amazing. Um, um, they still have a lot of their talent, a lot of their voices, and they're still absolutely amazing. Anyway, moved to Texas. I went through this country music phase, and the whole reason I fell into country music, driving to Texas, I remember this. I was in Jackson, Mississippi on Sunday. The car I drove down in had a CD player. I had packed maybe 12 CDs with me. and I was driving from the Boston area, and I had played those 12 CDs to the point to death, and I'm looking for radio stations in Jackson, Mississippi on a Sunday morning. So there was a whole lot of Going to Hell, whole like oh my goodness, I thought this was just in the movies. There's really people on the radio that talk like this. There's preachers like this, and then it was the country music top 40. That was like literally all I could find. And some like real just not good old country music. Super twangy. Anyway, so they're playing the top 40 country songs, and I happened to come in maybe around song 15. The first song was Garth Brooks, The Thunder Rolls. That was the first song. And I was like, I have some preconceived notions. I need to educate myself now because that's pretty snappy song. And this was and then I was like, wow, there's actually some really good stuff here. It was Sunday morning in Jackson, Mississippi. There was nothing to listen to the radio, and that was my introduction to country music. And then now everyone's just going to be like, wait a minute, what the hell? When I pulled the cord of country music, full on grunge, just full on grunge and alternative rock. So Alice in Chains, just went from country music to Smashing Pumpkins, Bullet with Butterfly Wings, and Green Day, early Green Day, love Green Day, and Alice in Chains, and Soundgarden from country music. I mean, it's just like rough. And then that movement kind of fizzled out. I don't know. They're like all dead. Catherine, the Ramones, they all died within. They're not all dead, I think they're right, but they all died. They almost all died within just a couple of years. You saw Nirvana at oh wow, Carrie, that's amazing. Pam, you're gonna hate me for this. I was never a big Pink Floyd fan. I'm sorry. All right, here's another one. Y'all are just gonna go, what the hell? You guys are gonna tear me an a-hole in this one. Not a big Rush fan. I'm just not. I respect their musical abilities so much. Their musical talent is unbelievable, right? All of them. But they're okay to me. They're okay. Like Pink Floyd, I'll listen to Floyd. It's not like I'm going to turn it off. But I guess Pink Floyd and Rush I put in the same camp. It's like, okay, it's a Rush song. I guess, is there nothing else better? Okay, fine. I'll listen to that. I seen them live too because I was dating a Rush fan. My cousin was the Yoko. Wait a minute. What? What do you mean your cousin was the Yoko Ono of 10,000 Maniacs? You cannot drop a comment like that and not give us more deets. We need the 411 on this. I like 10,000 Maniacs, by the way. Natalie, is it Natalie Maines? Am I? No. Natalie Merchant. Natalie Maines is Dixie Chicks. Natalie Merchant. Natalie Merchant's tremendously talented. Shell, here's interesting. I was not a fan of Metallica at the time. I'm a fan of them now. I had to grow into them. Same thing with rap. I think in part because I went from country music to grunge and you had rap really growing at that time. and uh, rap was in that same era, right? So I was late to the rap party, and Eminem's actually who kind of pulled me in to rap, because as I started diving into Eminem, I started really then exploring other rap music and got into a lot of it, but I was really tardy to the party on that stuff. And I would say I'm still kind of an alternative rock guy at this point. And I think that's kind of what my jam is. So wait a minute. So all right. Wait a minute. We're getting the story here on the 10,000 Maniac story. She dated the drummer after Natalie and the drummer split to see other people. Wow. I I'm not a fan of Don Henley. I love his music. Peter Gabriel's another one. No, Peter Gabriel's in a whole other area. Renee, I cannot believe you just admitted that out loud. Stop. Hammer time. Um, I love Don Henley as a musician. I think Don Henley, very talented individual. Don Henley is one of the leading. Same thing like Lars Ulrich. He's in the friggin' same boat as far as like these a-holes are one of the reasons we are in a DMCA nightmare. Don Henley would testify like in front of Congress. He has something like 40 or 60 full time people just looking for copyright violations of his music to send DMCA takedowns. you know, um, and so Gabriel is absolutely amazing. Peter Gabriel, you guys brought up, big Genesis fan, always been a Genesis fan. One of the greatest concerts I went to. I saw them in the '80s. They were it's just amazing, and they just kept playing, and then opening act was Tower of Power. Like holy crap, Tower, right? Totally different musical genre, but Tower of Power is amazing. So opening at Tower of Power, and then Genesis, Beastie Boys, they're like a whole nother era. At least I detested Vanilla Ice. Roll it in my 5.0 so my hair can blow. Uh, I think one of the greatest things in music that happened was Peter Gabriel leaving Genesis. Because Peter Gabriel, right, Genesis progressive rock, Peter Gabriel went in different directions. His song Salisbury Hill is about the angst of becoming a solo artist. I actually learned that recently. I was like, what the hell's this song about? And I just learned that. And I think Peter Gabriel's career thrived when he went solo. Would have never had the music had he stayed with Genesis that he produced. But likewise, I think Genesis thrived because they matured in a direction that wouldn't have happened if Gabriel was still with them. And it's so disappointing because I know Genesis has teased for years now, and I know they're getting ready to go back on tour in Europe. And I know that there's all this tease that they may do a tour with Peter Gabriel. There's so much egos with all four of them: Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, Phil Collins, and Peter Gabriel. They're four huge friggin' egos, which is what you get when you have super talented people like this. Peter Gabriel, one of the best kind of composers, right? He's more than a singer. He's like one of the best composer. We think of composers, right? We think classical music. He's one of the greatest composers of the last 50 years. Um, Phil Collins, he's one of the top three drummers in history, right? I mean, you can argue who those top three are. I don't think anybody's going to go, no, he's not in the top three. Phil Collins, one of the top three drummers, and a piano player, and a singer, and a writer, right? He's one of these people that's like, Tony Banks is also this Tony Banks is like who the hell's Tony Banks, right? He's the keyboard player of Genesis. Super brilliant composer and a brilliant, keyed instrument player. And then Mike Rutherford has just done all these projects, right? Yeah, and that's it, Shell. You just have all of these. Phil Collins definitely has an ego problem, but they all have ego problems, all four of them. And Phil Collins is in very poor health. His voice is still good, but he can't play the drums. He has so much nerve damage in his hands from beating on drums that he can't play the drums anymore. And I know, like, there's this whole. He wants his son to be the drummer, and by all reports, his son is supposed to be has the potential to be as talented as him. His son is still pretty young, but his son is supposed to be a tremendous drummer. And I think it's like Tony Banks. It's like Tony Banks doesn't want it, and then Peter Gabriel's like, I don't know, I don't want to get, and just like guys, you guys are all getting old. Come on, one more for glory. I would pay. Generally, I'm just like, I'm not paying money to go to this concert. Genesis with Peter Gabriel, I would pay stupid money to see. I would travel and pay stupid money to see that show. I wore parachute pants at MC Hammer at a concert. No photos exist, so you're safe. It never happened. I don't have a lot of photos of me in my punk rock era with. I went through a phase. Was in art school, and Peter Gabriel composing music last tape to soundtrack for every Video Majors project. Yeah, I am a nerd. I'm totally a nerd. Punk rock Mal was a thing. Yes. Oh, Big Audio Dynamites. That's a great thing. A great band. Beastie Boys. Beastie Boys are just tremendous. There are pictures of Cowboy Mal. There are pictures of Cowboy Mal that would just, people would be like, shut up. And I was probably darn close to as skinny as I was, say, a year ago. I have my COVID-15's turned into COVID-35, and I have to do something about it. Yes, and I haven't turned into a chud like many other ones. He likes Tiffany. Yeah, Tiffany. Debbie Gibson. ELO. All right. The opening to Fire on High. Fire on High or Fire on the Mountain? Is it Fire on High or Fire on the Mountain? Yeah, Fire on High. I was right. Fire on High. The opening for Fire on High. That is as timeless as it gets. The NFL in 2030 could take the opening of Fire on High and still use it to introduce the Super Bowl, and it would still work. Do. Oh my. Courtney, I bet you can find it on eBay. I totally forgot about. That was that whole creepy phase with perfumes where there was like perfumes being aimed at like teenagers and tweens, and there was some really Like, whoa. That advertising agency really didn't go there. What was it? Love is Baby Soft. That's like one of the worst ads of all time. Um, there's some like really gross stuff there. Well, we're a bunch of nerds in here. We were talking about great country music, and somehow we ended up with ELO and Fire on High, and everybody here's testing my encyclopedic music knowledge. Your Fire on High impression sounds like Joe's Walls Turned to Stone. I see what. The stuff that's backwards on there. Do people know what it is? It's turn back, turn back, turn back. Time is not reversible, but this record is. That's what is in backwards on Fire on High. Um, anyway, that's what's in there. And when I say the opening, like that's not the start you would do, right? This whole stuff that kind of sounds like Damien in the open, that's not the part. I'm talking the very beginning opening part where yeah, ELO was amazing stuff. Telephone line, just all right. Can we talk about this artist? Can we talk about this artist? Giorgio Moroder. Was Giorgio Moroder? I mean, he's still making music. Is he not just a friggin' musical genius? A Heart's amazing also. Giorgio Moroder was my first introduction to essentially techno and trance. Never went through a techno trance phase, but I like basically all music. Wow, Rex. No, you don't know Giorgio Moroder? He did soundtrack to the movie Midnight Express. Man, that Midnight Express, that's the dude in the Turkish movie. That's an intense one. And he did the soundtrack to this. Who remembers the 80s movie? You're a true child of the 80s if you remember the movie Electric Dreams. If you remember the movie Electric Dreams, you're a true child of the 80s. And now I'm going to wait for the comments and see if everyone was like, oh my God, Electric Dreams. I remember Electric Dreams. Got a 6.5 on IMDb. There you go. Giorgio Moroder did the soundtrack for Electric Dreams. It is a tremendous. He didn't do the entire soundtrack, but incredible stuff there. But he's also done some stuff recently. He just continues to go. Well, shoot, Boston. I'm from Boston. It's funny. There was a, gosh darn it. I got to look up the name. I just know the last name. Bob Rivers. If you're from Seattle, you certainly know Bob Rivers, right? Bob Rivers, the DJ that did all these parody songs. He was DJ here in Seattle, what, about 20 years. So if you've been following along this random stream of musical consciousness, I mentioned WAAF in Worcester. Bob Rivers started at WAAF in Worcester, and they fired him. And it is considered one of the most colossal mistakes in radio history. I can't even remember what he did to get fired. Conservative area, conservative town. He must have hurt some form of sensibilities, and he was fired from WAF. And he did a bunch of stuff that people have probably forgotten that I'm not going to get into my stream of consciousness there. But one of the things that Bob Rivers did is he did this parody song about Boston, the band Boston. And it was called it's been, he did a parody of Such a Long Time, and it's such a long time since we made an album. And so I just remember this about that. Never watched Thin Blue Line. Rex, I'm very impressed. Very, very impressed. And really impressed. And I was totally computer nerd. This is one thing that I am really fortunate as a kid that I went to an amazing public school system through junior high. And then I went to a Catholic school for 4 years and became totally confused by religion. And that's why I'm not really religious anymore. Thank you, Catholic Church. Uh, but I went to an amazing school system my first 8 years in public school. We were taught computer programming as part of mathematics class in the seventh grade. And I very quickly discovered that I talked to robot race really, really well. And so I was able to do, anyway, I was able to program very well. So I was a hardcore computer nerd when Electric Dreams came out. The whole concept and the idea of what the computer is able to do on its own was complete BS, but that's a whole separate thing. Yeah, we're still doing senile Gen X musings, exactly. Twisted Tunes, all that Twisted Tunes stuff. I mean, 12 Pains of Christmas will just be, I totally love the 12 Pains of Christmas because it's so true. All of it is so true. A couple of things are a little cringy in there. A couple of things haven't aged well in that song, but, it's not to the point you need to throw it on the trash heap. Not familiar with that soundtrack. Familiar with the movie, but not familiar with the soundtrack. Wow. Best soundtrack. Okay, if we're going to say best soundtrack, we're going to eliminate things like Walk the Line, right? Biopic movies involving musical artists. We're going to go ahead and, this is Spinal Tap, faux or the Ruddles. Let's take those out of the equation. Only. Yeah, I type my high school papers on a typewriter, my college papers on a computer. Wow, there's all like y'all are cracking off these movies that I have not seen. This is a tough one. Music soundtrack, my favorite music soundtrack, but chafe out the softballs. Yeah, I'm not going to say that one. There's one that came to mind, but I'm just like, yeah, it's a softball because I just saw a documentary and a person brought it up, and I was like, they're right. That is a great soundtrack. Um, oh, okay. Here we go. Punk rock malcontent. Repo Man. Repo Man is one of the greatest movie soundtracks of all friggin' time. Fight me. Not the movie Repo Men, the Emilio Estevez Repo Man. That is one of the greatest soundtracks. Pulp Fiction. I'll give you that. Pulp Fiction's another good one. Repo Man. Just an amazing soundtrack. Yeah, a couple people saying Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is a good one. Absolutely. I agree. Pulp Fiction is definitely a good one. There's another one that just popped in my head and it's gone. Well, it's Cheech and Chong. Trying to think of another one. But yeah, Repo Man, one of the greatest soundtracks. I'm like going through my I'm thing is like I have like Disney, like I have like Tarzan, that Phil Collins did, including the classical music. I think it's incredible. I think it really is an incredible. But it's like it's I don't want to do because it's like, okay, you want to do classical music, then you're just doing like, okay, Close Encounter, right? It's all this John Williams stuff, right? Close Encounters and Star Wars and right. It just becomes throwing softballs. I'm trying to think of harder stuff where movie's not really about music. It's just and the music is part of the movie. Well, all right, let's back off from movies for a minute. What's the TV show that made music an integral part of the TV show, Miami Vice. You can go back further and say WKRP in Cincinnati, music was part, but generally the music that would be playing kind of as like, coming into the DJ booth and they would key up a song for like that 20 seconds. And then, Clockwork Orange is good. Inception is good. But Miami Vice, Emily is good. Miami Vice, integrated a ton of pop music into the show itself. I know it's a TV show, not a movie. I'm just going to say Repo Man, final answer. I think my brain's starting to, and I see the audience is drifting away also. So we've gone crazy over that. Mods and admins probably want to kill me here. We've just had this total random conversation. And as much as some of you are enjoying it, we've actually lost most of the audience. No. I don't want to exit that. I don't need to save this file either. No, no. We're not ready to exit. No. Forrest Gump is a good. He said, okay, so I'm going to say the one that I was like, it's a softball because I just heard it, but I agree, it's a great soundtrack. Goodfellas. Goodfellas is an amazing soundtrack. I mean, who hasn't watched Goodfellas and then hears the bridge to Layla and isn't instantly taken to the movie Goodfellas? Whenever I hear the bridge to Layla, I'm just instantly taken to this montage, right, of everyone kind of getting eliminated over the Lufthansa height. Guardians of the Galaxy is a great soundtrack. That's another one. And that's why I was saying, like, Goodfellas is a softball for me because it was just it literally I would just heard somebody mention it yesterday when they said it. I was like, it is a good soundtrack. Canadian. All right, you got to help me out here. I can't remember the name of the TV show. Filmed in Canada, super popular in the United States. It was a cop show, SWAT team. One of the actresses was the Pink Power Ranger. Steelers Wheel totally regrets that they gave permission for the use of Stuck in the Middle with You in Reservoir Dogs. They absolutely hate it because they feel like that's where everybody goes and they feel that the movie ruined the song. There's your worthless trivia there. China Beach had great music. So help me out here. It was a TV show, super popular. I want to say like early 2000s. It was filmed in Canada. It was a Canadian TV series, crossed over to the United States. Super popular. Didn't always have a happy ending. Woman from the Pink Power Rangers, one of the SWAT officers. Damn it. Was it Flashpoint? Was it Flashpoint? Yes, it was Flashpoint. It was Flashpoint. So Flashpoint, 2008, 2012, show out of Canada. And no, I don't know. They weren't Mounties. It was like, it was a SWAT team. It's one of these things you wouldn't think that it was from Canada unless you notice the badges and stuff. But it was filmed Canadian series, crossover the United States. They always ended the TV show with a full-on song, kind of like a little music video kind of thing. They would play the entire song. House would do this. House did very similar thing to the end. And House played amazing music. And I was introduced to so many independent musical artists from the TV show Flashpoint. So many musical artists. I kind of like started watching the show just because I wanted to hear the song at the end to go like, what was the song? Like I would watch Flashpoint and have just Shazam ready to go at the end to go like, what song is that? Oh, Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf is just genius. Massive attack. Oh, okay. All right, here's another one. You know, I said Repo Man. Okay, so Repo Man in the 80s. Let me go to the 90s. One of the best musical soundtrack of the 90s? The Matrix. The Matrix soundtrack is mind-blowingly good. Fight me. Yes, Red Dwarf is BBC. And it's still a genius show. It's just that is just an amazing soundtrack. The original Matrix soundtrack. So that's my vote for the 90s. I'm just with my people right now. Oh, look at this. Oh, you see, people are fighting me here. All right. You can have your opinion. I can't say I'm familiar with Strange Days. Like, we could just have a whole nother hour conversation on one-hit wonders, but I'm not going to do that. And I love Red Dwarf. Wasn't there a Red Dwarf movie, or there's a Red Dwarf movie that's coming, or 2000? See, this is tough. My favorite out of it's actually one of my running songs, is Clubbed to Death off of the Matrix soundtrack. There's actually several songs off the Matrix soundtrack that are my running songs when I jog. And the Clubbed to Death is very strategically placed in my mix at about the 25-minute running point, because, oh, Dan, 80s. See, this is now Risky Business competes with Repo Man. Risky Business is a stunningly good soundtrack. And that segues to Tangerine Dream, right? Because part of the soundtrack is Tangerine Dream. I think what we're talking about, and I totally agree. I think what we're talking about is compiled. I think when we're saying best, I'd said earlier, I think what we're talking about here is more compiled. I have Clubbed to Death at about 25 minutes into the mix. If you've jogged, if you've ever done like hardcore cardio, you got to go through this wall, right? You hit this part where your body is just screaming to you, okay, stop. This is unnatural, right? We're not being chased by zombies. You could stop, and you got to push through that. And when you push through that, then running is mental. I started running like 8 to 10K. I've backed off of that. But I was running like 8 to 10K that daily. This was just I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to go run 8, 10K. And when I had people that really run started getting in my circle, and they were like, I was like, I'm going to start training for like maybe a half marathon. And we're like, if you're running 10Ks daily, there is no training. You are ready for a half marathon. And they're right. I ran a half marathon with like no training, and I did a 2 hour, 8 minutes. So anyway, but back to Risky Business soundtrack. Risky Business is great, and the thing about the Club to Death, right, is it has that beat. There's kind of that, and it's just I can keep pace to that beat, and there's a little bit the music, right. There's some melancholy piano in there at times, which for me is like that. Yes, that's exactly how I feel. This melancholy piano, and then it's just back to that do right, and then you're right back into that pace, and it helps me get over the border, over the bump there. Risky Business soundtrack is great. Tangerine Dream is amazing. I was big time into Tangerine Dream, including some of the really early stuff, which like is a pretty weird when you listen to it now. It's not quite Animal Noises, Brian Wilson weird, but some of the early Tangerine Dream stuff is just like, hey, I got some idea. Let's do some psychedelic drugs and just play with synthesizers and record it, and then we're going to put it up for sale. Just what some of the really early stuff sounds there. Um, to me, one of a totally underrated movie from the 80s, I talked about Electric Dreams. Here's another one 80s movie. If you saw this, you're a product of the 80s. Tangerine Dream soundtrack, all of it. Miracle Mile. Miracle Mile. And a Miracle Mile is a friggin' see, Pam, there you go, the wall. I said music things like that don't count. I had qualified that right out of the gate, right? Because stuff based around, Tommy the Who, right? You could say, oh, Tommy's got an amazing soundtrack, but Tommy's a rock opera. It was written to be amazing. Who played the mom in Tommy? She has a distinction. She won the Academy Award. Very attractive. Great actress. Who was her name? Come on, my products of the 70s. What's her name? Oh my God, I could see her face. It's fun. The audience is Anne Margaret. Yes, thank you. Anne Margaret, here's your worthless. I've given you a drop of Wall Street. Here's another bit of worthless trivia. Anne Margaret won the Oscar, I believe, for Best Supporting Actress. It's either Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress for Tommy. I think it's Best Actress. She is the only person in the history of Oscars to win the Oscar, and she sang all of her lines. There's your worthless trivia. Good night, Catherine. Good night. Oh, Beverly Hills Cop was a good one. Dirty Dancing is a good one. Nobody Puts Baby in a Corner. Beverly Hills Cop is definitely Howard Faltermeyer, right? Howard Faltermeyer not only write Miami Vice, so he was on top of the world. Very 80s. I don't know how much you had Glenn Frey do songs in there too. I don't know how well the Dirty Dancing, not Dirty Dance. I don't know how well the Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack is aged, but that's a different standard, right? And now people are like, "What's best music soundtrack from 20 to 2010?" I don't know. I had kids, right? So I was seeing like a lot of Disney movies. I was seeing a lot of G movies from 20 in the saw a lot of G movies in the 2000. Lots of G movies. Right? I could just start rattling off a bunch of Pixar and Disney movies for lots of Randy Newman in the 2000s for me. Lots of Randy Newman. All right. I think I'm kind of hit the wall, and I'm sure the mods and admins at this point are like, when the hell is he just going to shut up and go away? Wow. Breakfast Club is an amazing soundtrack. Like, as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my God, you are so right. Breakfast Club was an amazing soundtrack. Pretty in Pink is right. Pretty in Pink is an interesting soundtrack because that's kind of more of this new wave. There's a little bit of kind of punk influence and all of that. That's an interesting one. That's a very, very interesting one. By the way, one of my favorite movies from the 80s, I'll close with this. One Crazy Summer. I think One Crazy Summer. Okay, it helps that it's set in Massachusetts where I grew up. So, and there are a lot of places that they show in that movie, which the movie actually is filmed in places in Cape Cod. It's not filmed in Nantucket where it takes set in. But a lot of places that they show are like places I've been, places that I know, places I've visited. And so that movie's always had a little fuzzy spot in my heart. But I think One Crazy Summer is just friggin' just this genius movie, and I think it's an underrated comedy. So anyway, go listen to Wolves by Garth Brooks, Stones of the Road, Mary Chapin Carpenter, all these years, Sawyer Brown, and go find the video for Pirates of the Caribbean, not Pirates of the Caribbean, Pirates of the Mississippi, Feed Jake. And if you could find the video for Pirates of the Mississippi, Feed Jake, have a tissue. One Crazy Summer and Better Off Dead are in that right. They're John Cusack. It's the same, producer and kind of actors in there, and both those movies are hysterical. They're hysterical for different reasons. I know it's getting late. My brain hurt. But Joy, One Crazy Summer and Better Off Dead are some of my favorite movies out of the '80s, and another one out of the '80s that I love the fact that as this movie gets older, it is getting more and more of the respect that it deserves. $2. I want my $2. $2. Same thing. There's some gags in there that are kind of cringeworthy, right? They haven't kind of aged well. But it's not to the point of like, well, you've got to cancel it. The whole, getting raced and the car things. It's just, oh my goodness. Gross Point. It's Cusack, yeah. Real Genius. Real Genius. That movie is, wasn't super popular when it came out. But it's really starting to get this cult following. Real Genius is set at Caltech Pasadena, where I got to go to school. I was very, very fortunate to have an employer, really fortunate to have an employer send me there. Yeah. But Real Genius is essentially about college life at Caltech Pasadena. And I was not there as a college-age student. I was there older. It's an employer that I was totally miserable at, and it's the one good thing that I got out of there is going to Caltech Pasadena. And when I literally finished up that program, basically like 2 weeks after I could quit, I did. They were really pissed. Oh, I totally forgot about Yahoo Serious. No, Weird Science is from Weird Science. Real Genius has a bunch of like one-hit wonder. I don't know. Bryan Adams. There's a Bryan Adams song. It's the Real Genius soundtrack. I'm just talking about great movies. It is a great soundtrack. You're totally missing things up. Yes, Real Genius is the one where they fill the house up with popcorn and they blow the house up. Yes. That is what that movie is, right? And it's the whole building the laser, trying to develop Val Kilmer. Oh my God, Blue Velvet. Dennis Hopper, Blue Velvet. But yeah, Real Genius is everyone like if you do the movie like, oh, it's the house they blew up with the popcorn, then everybody knows Real Genius of that movement. Blue Velvet was a little traumatic for me also. One second, let me check this link. Oh my goodness, you felt like I have the chills. Yeah, this is it. I'm going to get like uncontrollable the feels. Thank you so much, Rex, for finding that link. You have found like this was out of circulation, so you found the full video link, all of it. Laszlo Hollyfeld. That's the guy who was living in the closet. Was Laszlo Hollyfeld. Yeah, exactly. There, there's some shit like okay, Caltech Pasadena. What they do is they freeze pumpkins at Caltech Pasadena in liquid nitrogen, and then they see how far they can launch them. This is their idea of fun over Halloween at Caltech Pasadena. So this where Val Kilmer's character is cutting cutting the piece of frozen, solid nitrogen out of it to essentially create a slug in the coffee machine that will then just evaporate away. This is a bit of a wink to the love affair with liquid, because it's even like, is that nitrogen? Right? Because Mitch asks him, he's like, yeah. And he's like, where are the gloves to push it through the thing? This is a wink and a nod to the frozen liquid nitrogen pumpkin fun and games at Caltech Pasadena. Yeah, exactly. Um, so this whole thing of like the dorm life with like the I'm not a the getting the car, um, and how did they get the car into the room and stuff. There's some students who actually did that in the high school in the town that I grew up in, and they ended up getting sent to the science fair. They they got a Volkswagen Bug into the cafeteria, and then they put a lighter in it, filled it with water, and filled it with goldfish. True friggin' story. I didn't go to this high school. This is the town I grew up in. And there was no. And then they just left it there on some tables in the cafeteria, and they snuck it over the weekend to do this. And then, of course, everyone comes in and it's like, "Where's this Volkswagen light filled with goldfish? How did it get here?" And there was like, how did you get it in here? And like they used math, because it was like you can't get it through the doors, and no, they didn't disassemble it. So when they take Kent's car, and Kent, this is like, again, kind of the shit that goes on at Caltech. So, um, but yeah, Real Genius. The movie is so getting like the props it deserves now. If you haven't seen Real Genius, it's a great movie today, right? Because there's all this warning about the government, and there's shady shit in the movie, and like we're doing that shady shit now, and no, we don't have space lasers, um, but the movie is kind of about space lasers. Oh, okay. Uh, just a Kiwi gal from New Zealand, Tank Girl. All right, let's have a movie conversation since you brought up Tank Girl. And there's a fair number of women in the conversation here right now. Tank Girl, and then if we go into the 2000s, Sucker Punch. Two movies, right? Tank Girl didn't do super well in the movie theaters. Part of the reason was because Tank Girl was forced to edit out some things to get its R rating. It was skating on an NC-17 rating. Apparently, there's like something there, and so some of the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor hurt the story, because there was some stuff that ended on the cutting room floor that would have been critical to understand some other parts of the story. Um, oh my goodness! Now you see, all right. So people here are talking about Sucker Punch and Tank Girl. Now, Tank Girl, when that came out, right? Tank Girl was in the 90s, and I'm like in my country music phase. So I wasn't introduced until Tank Girl afterwards. Tank Girl's a great soundtrack. Sucker Punch. Okay, actually, I would say Sucker Punch is one of the best soundtracks out of the 2000s. Sucker Punch was eviscerated by critics as being kind of like, this movie is the fever dream of a misogynist teenager who has played too many video games. And um, I watched Sucker Punch because I'm like, I'll make a lot of times what I find is like, if critics hate it, I love it. And I watched Sucker Punch and I walked out of the movie and I'm like, I'm not getting the fever dream misogyn. I'm not getting this at all. If anything, I'm getting this movie. Um, it's like, wow, you watched a different movie than me. I I felt Sucker Punch was a very empowering movie for women. Um, Baby Doll. I don't think we ever hear her name. It's always just Baby Doll. Um, what you learn through that movie is, look, the movie's old. I'm not giving any spoilers here at this point. Um, what you learn through that movie is Baby Doll did accidentally kill her sister. We learn this in the movie, and Baby Doll has snapped from this. And essentially, Baby Doll wants what's going to happen to her at the finish line, wants it because she doesn't want to remember this anymore. But I feel that it's an empowering movie. And same thing, Tank Girl, I think, is a very, very empowering movie. And I think Tank Girl and Sucker Punch, they're different, but they're in that same vein. And Lori Petty, I think that's her best role. I like Lori Petty was so in her place in that movie. I think the other thing too is with Tank Girl is there was this intentional style with the movie. Same like Mars Attacks. Like I've read some reviews like, oh, the special effects in Mars Attacks weren't very good and the aliens were overdone. And I'm like, this was the whole point of the movie. This was the movie was a mockery of B movies of the 50s. That was the whole thing behind Mars Attacks. And that's where Tim Burton was going with this in his very Tim Burton way. And I will never forgive Tim Burton for what he did for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Tim Burton became dead to me after he did that movie. But Mars Attacks, I think, is genius. And I know Tank Girl is looked through the same filter, and it's like Tank Girl was a British comic. They were going for the comic book style. This was done in a very similar feel and genre of some of the Batman movies of the era. Some of the some of it was budget constraint, but some of it was very intentional to be true to the source materials. So I haven't seen Suicide Squad either, and I want to see that one. And I just another movie, and I'm going to close. And I'm serious. I'm going to close with this because we've segued from music into movie. Although we keep dancing on music, but Sucker Punch is an amazing soundtrack. It really is. There is a remake of White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit, on Sucker Punch soundtrack. So amazing. Not in the horror genre of movies. There's only a handful of horror movies that it's not my thing. Like Children of the Corn to me is like a comedy. It's like, okay, it's supposed to be horror, but it's like this movie is just a comedy. Outlander, we have your woman. And the other one, like, you may have never seen Children of the Corn, but you know this line. He wants you too, Malachi. He wants you too. Right? Everybody knows. It's just like you may have never seen the movie Aliens, but everybody knows. Game over, man. Game over. We're in for some pretty shit now. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Like everybody knows this movie, right? Everyone knows these quotes. I'm not a big horror fan. Full stop. I think The Ring, first of all, the Japanese version of The Ring is genius. I think the American version of The Ring is genius right up until we have to keep going so we can have the sequel. I'm not going to ruin The Ring if you haven't seen it. You get to the punchline, and and when it comes, the question, and it's like when the question gets asked, you're just like, genius, great storytelling, because you know what the answer to the question is. And they could have just ended the movie there. But no. Oh no, we have to set up for the sequel. and they keep going for like 20 minutes. And I remember I was like, "Oh, the movie's over, and this is genius." And I remember I saw it in the theater, because I just was hearing so much good things about The Ring, and I thought The Ring was amazing. And The Ring is one of the only, again, I've probably only seen maybe 5 horror movies in the theaters. It's the only one I was in where the whole audience jumped and screamed at multiple points in the movie. Um, the Ring was early lights. I think it's okay to spoil. I don't know. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it. Early aughts. There's people here say they haven't seen it. It's like The Ring is like, look, if you just like, I don't like another one that I like in the horror thing, 13 Ghosts. I even bought the DVD. Harry Shalhoub. The Ring was boring. Oh no, no, ow. 13 Ghosts. Harry Shalhoub does like his monk thing. I think Monk was going on when he did 13 Ghosts. And he's doing his monk thing in this 13 Ghosts, and it's just friggin' it's like horror, but it's a comedy, but it's horror. And I think that there's this real fascinating story that's kind of attached to it all. So um I really like, and 13 Ghosts I know is kind of like in a lot of reviews. The Ring was boring. Poltergeist scared the shit out of me. The thing about Poltergeist is like TV, like people, like you, if someone is never like, okay, Gen Z watch Poltergeist, right? National anthem plays, TV goes to static. They're not even going to know what this is, right? You got to be Gen X or older to know what that is about. Like after I saw Poltergeist, if I fell asleep on the couch watching TV at night as like a young teen and it went to static, I would jump in the air like 3 friggin' feet after seeing that movie. I would like be going into the garage to go get like something with a long handle. I don't want to get too close. I'll touch the, I'm just gonna leave it running with the stat. I need to go pray. Shining's just a great movie. Shining was just a great misery. Misery. Misery's a creepy movie. You know what movie scares me? Like I said, we're talking about horror. Movie that scares me, Outbreak. Outbreak's a terrifying movie to me. It's still terrifying to this day because Outbreak, to me, I could see Outbreak happening. Gen Z doesn't know what a dial tone is. That's true. Um, I won't even mention The Ring. We were just talking about The Ring. Outbreak is terrifying to me because I could see Outbreak happening. Like right up to the, hey, we're going to blow up this town. That's how we're going to solve the problem here. Outbreak is terrifying to me. It's just like Failsafe. The 1964. Is it Fail? God, I remembered the year. I am such on an ADHD bubbly rush right now. Failsafe, 1964. If boy, if you haven't seen Failsafe from 1964, boy, is that one worth watching. Terrifying movie. Because I could see it happening. It is an awesome movie. It is a terrifying movie. Larry Hagman, a very young Larry Hagman, is in there. And the thing that is so powerful about that movie is you have, God, who plays the president? Who plays the president? I can think of his name. Henry Fonda. You have Henry Fonda and Larry Hagman are together in On the Beach is terrifying, but slow. Yes, also. Everybody here is talking about Poltergeist, Firestarter. This is like when, yeah, you're into this like this whole John Carpenter and Stephen King, and like every friggin' movie was like John Carpenter or Stephen King. Original Carrie is terrifying. Now I'm thinking about it. I guess I've seen more horror movies there, like Christine. Um, I don't know. Christine is like almost in the same vein as a comedy for me, right? It's not. It's not like the Shine. I mean, The Shining's a masterpiece. I love Stanley Kubrick. I love his style. I never watched Saw. I can't see. This is like bad things happening to good people. I don't like. This is why I don't like where The Ring went after they got to the punchline. Yeah, the original was like, meh. You mean Maximum Overdrive? Are you talking about Maximum Overdrive? Maximum Overdrive has an incredible soundtrack, AC/DC soundtrack, including like 4 songs made for the movie. Right, Sink the Pink. There's like about 4 songs that were made for that movie. Um, The Fly. But Maximum Overdrive is just such a terrible, terrible movie. How about Night of the Comet? There's another terrible 80s quasi horror comedy movie. It's funny. We keep picking up people. It's like I watch the numbers starts go down, and people start coming in. They're like, "Oh, this is a great conversation." The Fly. He was good in that movie. Isn't that how? Isn't that when Gina Davis and him? Right. That's where the relationship started. Right. Oh, Duel. Duel was Duel. No, Duel wasn't Lucas. Right. Duel is Spielberg. Look, I'm hopelessly cis. Jeff Goldblum was friggin' like ripped in the friggin' Fly. I'll really do that. The burden of civilization is a part. We might be better off. Spielberg, Duel was Spielberg, yeah, because Lucas, right, was THX 1138, I think, was around the same time. So Duel was Spielberg, and then Lucas did this THX, which is why he has the THX opening for his Lucas, whatever. THX 1138 is kind of a scary dystopian. There's some stuff in THX 1138 that we're kind of at. There's some stuff in that movie that was kind of like predicted some shit going on now. Yeah, Duel. I can't remember what the car he was driving, but like, I just know for the era, if an 18 wheeler was trying to run you off the road, that was like about the worst. The only thing that you could drive was worse. Might have been a Slant Six Dodge Dart or a Volkswagen Bug. There was no outrunning anything in that car that he was driving. Um, Someone mentioned 2001. 2001 is a cinematic masterpiece, but it is slow. But it is a cinematic masterpiece. Goes back to Kubrick. Some of the most amazing. Right, think about where that movie was done. 68. The special effects are mind melting in there. 2010. The second part of the 2010 is equally good, but for a different reason. It's not the cinematic masterpiece. 2010 is Helen Mirren. Done. Done. Mic drop. By the way, Dr. Mrs. Malcontent said that Helen Mirren's Russian accent was actually pretty damn good. She's watched a number of movies with me, like Cold War era movies. She's like, God, their Russian's just awful. It's laughable to her. She was pretty impressed with Helen Mirren. She's like, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid. It's like, yeah, you can tell she's not, but it's pretty solid. Are we talking about Jeff Goldblum? Okay, my favorite movie. Pam, this is your fault. My favorite movie of all time. Things to do in Denver when you're dead. And I am truly going to close out on this. Christopher Walken plays the most evil, terrifying, rotten creep of his entire career in Things to Do in Denver when you're dead. He is we never hear his name. He is the man with the plan. He's always referred to the man with the plan. And seriously, Things to Do to Denver when you're dead, that's like my desert island movie. You get to go on a desert island, you can only have one movie. Things to Do in Denver when you're dead. Thank you very much. I've probably seen that movie 100 times. I could watch it 100 times in a row. It just, oh, and also amazing freaking soundtrack. Big Head Todd of the Monsters. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash is on there. Oh my God. Like Christopher Walken plays this just unbelievable character. And I read Christopher Walken, he did like an autobiography. And I'm sure someone ghostwrote it. I'm sure he didn't write it. And I read it. And, he talks about all the different movies he did. He actually wasn't too thrilled with Things to Do in Denver with Dead, but he told this story. Didn't say who it was. Said there was a person, friend, good friend of his. Went to the premiere, right? So if you think got invited to go to the premiere, the private screening, right? That's somebody in his inner circle. And then, I'm paraphrasing, that person ghosted Christopher Walken. And I'm under the impression reading the book that this is somebody that was, in his inner circle. And then finally, Christopher Walken was able, what's going on? And that person basically cut Christopher Walken out of his circle because he's like, you were so real that, frankly, you scare me to the point that this amount of evil is inside of you, that you could play this role the way you did in Things to Do in Denver when you're dead. Okay. Okay. Can one of the mods there? Oh, actually, you know what? Thank you for playing. Been taken care of. Been totally taken care of. I can actually do that now. All right, it's bedtime, everybody. I'm like way over. It's all your fault. Thank you, Malcontent. Monday, back to the real shore. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I kind of enjoyed it. I think the mods and admins were like, well, he just friggin' finished. It's like, I don't know. I don't know, but I took care of it. Oh my God. Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper in the same movie. This is the stuff of nightmares. All right, everybody. This is it. Good night, everybody. Be good to each other. I don't anticipate we're doing any streams this weekend. I don't think there's anything kind of big in coming up. And I will, it definitely was in the wrong group, but I'm very impressed that you were able to read that. They have been knocked out. And, Google Translate. You see, you should have said something like, yes, I was in the CIA and I served in the military. And that's why I can read that stuff.